Hello and good morning. It is 7 a.m. and on today's programme, the Prime Minister struggles to win over rebel MPs ahead of today's crucial vote on benefit cuts.
Are the government confident they will win? We'll ask the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, in the next few minutes.
Plus, what's happening to our energy bills? Prices are down today for 21 million households. We'll bring you the details shortly.
It is Tuesday, the 1st of July. Keir Starmer faces the biggest revolt of his premiership over welfare, with Labour rebels accusing the government of breaking promises. The UK's largest ever knife crime surrender scheme is being launched today. We've got a special report on the reality of knife crime. Europe bakes under a heat dome with temperatures of more than 40 degrees. And here in the UK, we can expect another scorcher. And Emma Raducanu roars into the second round of Wimbledon on a historic first day for British players. Good morning, welcome to The Breakfast Show. Plenty ahead on a busy day. Now, the Prime Minister is in a last-ditch battle to persuade his MPs to back his welfare reforms. Some leading backbenchers say the concessions agreed last week don't go far enough and have warned of creating a three-tier benefit system. Well, more than 50 Labour MPs could vote against the bill in Parliament later, which would be the biggest rebellion of Keir Starmer's premiership so far. Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, has our top story.
Anger outside Parliament and in. Changes to disability benefits forced the government into a major climb down. Yesterday, the Welfare Secretary confirmed current claimants won't lose out.
We believe protecting existing claimants whilst beginning to focus PIP on those with higher needs for new claimants going forward strikes the right and fair balance.
And universal credit will rise.
This will ensure no existing claimants are put into poverty as a result of the changes in this bill.
No existing claimants, but the government admit 150,000 new ones will be poorer. Listen to this Labour MP.
Having no public consultation on these plans excludes the voices of disabled people. This is not just about process. This makes disabled people worse off.
Others questioned why a review of PIP won't report until the cuts come in.
Surely the PIP review should determine the new process, if this is being truly co-produced with disabled people and their organisations.
The Conservative leader said the changes do not save enough money.
We will be voting against, because at the end of the day, we have to look at who we're doing this for. It is the taxpayer, it is the next generation who are having to pay a lot of money in debt.
People here are holding on to hope that MPs might still reject these changes. But even if they get through, the rebels have damaged the Prime Minister's authority and delivered a stark warning about what they'll accept that government can't ignore.
In Leicester, where Liz Kendall is the MP, we met Abigail. She was working full-time and engaged when a sudden diagnosis with a debilitating condition changed her life.
I just wish these MPs, that when they vote, remember that anyone can suddenly become disabled and it can, devastate their lives.
She wouldn't score 4 points under the new criteria and is worried for future claimants.
We're being thrown to the wolves, basically, and it's going to have a devastating effect. And after 15 years of Tory austerity, we're now facing austerity 2.0.
This was a rebellion which threatened to derail the government's agenda. Ministers hope they've done enough to take the temperature down. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, our political correspondent, Serena Barker-Singh, is with us now. Morning to you, Serena. So, look, it's not to overplay this. It's a big day for the government. They were going to lose the vote last week until they made the concessions. They've made them. People still aren't happy.
Well, exactly. They thought they stayed off the rebellion, and today is the crucial vote. We expect that later this evening, potentially around 7 o'clock, but things can move around. As you say, there's no big jeopardy. The government think they have done enough to persuade enough people to vote for it, but we shouldn't really be in this position. We shouldn't really be talking about this. This is a flagship welfare policy bill. A whole full bill at second reading hasn't ever really been overturned. I think it's happened once in 120 years, with a government that has a majority, a huge majority, over 400 MPs. We shouldn't really be in this position, but we are. The Wrecking Amendment that had 127 rebels threatening to sign now has about 39 Labour MPs. But of course, you've got independents who will vote for that, and the Tories saying they won't vote for this bill as well. So chaos and confusion this morning. That will all be sort of teased out tonight, but not a good look for the government.
No, it's not. And just on that note for political nerds, the last time government was defeated at second reading was the Shops Bill, Margaret Thatcher, back in 1986. She also had a huge majority at that time as well. Plenty of peril ahead for the government to make sure they can hold on to their authority. So later, we're going to speak to the Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, to get his take what the government's going to be doing. Yeah,
going to be interesting. The UK's largest ever knife surrender scheme is being launched today. Sky's Tom Parmenter has been to a hospital in Manchester and spoken to one victim of knife crime and the frontline teams who have worked to save him.
I've never in my life been stabbed, so I don't know how it's meant to even feel. So initially, the pain came when I realised the blood's just spitting out the side of my ribcage. And that's when I start panicking. All I could hear was everybody screaming around me, about 10 voices, you know. I just felt like as though I was slowly slipping away. My lungs felt like they were filled with blood, where I couldn't breathe. I thought that each breath that I take, I'm gonna drown in my own blood.
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
I'd say even for the perpetrators, it is not worth it, man. Because once you decide to carry a knife, trust me, it ends two ways. Either you stab someone or you get stabbed.
You should have the right to feel safe and protected wherever you are, so don't blame yourself for what happened. We are going to be there to help you.
Favour is here to offer support beyond the physical injuries. She's not here to judge. The police are investigating what's happened.
Favour has shown me that you don't have to be alone in a situation like this.
Yeah, really strong report there from Tom Parmenter. You can watch the full report. It's online and the Sky News app, of course.
It's well worth a watch. Now, it's going to be another scorch today, but after today, it could get a bit cooler. Well, Jo Robinson, our meteorologist, is here with us. Morning to you, Jo.
Morning.
So, it was hot last night.
It was, wasn't it?
It was very warm.
Several places stayed above 20 degrees Celsius last night, so it was a tropical night in places from Cambridge down into London. Yeah, not falling below 20 degrees, so it was a very warm.
What's going to happen in the next couple of days then? Is it continuing like this? Will there be a breakthrough? And what's the landscape across the country?
Well, yeah, so there is a change today. We had quite widespread heat yesterday, particularly across England. We had 30 degrees all the way up into northern parts of England. Today, the extreme heat is mainly across the southeast, certainly from an area from Norwich across to Exeter. Southeast of that, we'll probably see higher temperatures today than yesterday. So we didn't quite reach the 34 mark yesterday, could see 34 today, maybe small chance of 35 if all the elements fall into place. It will depend on there's a bit more cloud around, that may affect temperatures and the breeze, things like that.
Jo, when it does break, are we going to get a nice big storm, or is it just going to get cooler?
No, there isn't a big thundery breakdown. Sometimes when you have, 3 hot days and then the thunderstorms arrive, it's not going to be quite like that. There will be a risk in the north today. There'll be some heavy rain, perhaps some isolated thunderstorms there. And then maybe tonight into first thing tomorrow morning, there's a risk of perhaps some thundery downpours in the southeast. But yes, not the widespread thundery breakdown that sometimes we see when we have hot, humid weather.
At least you're telling us it's getting a bit cooler, which will help our sleep for this
cooler
week.
For all on Wednesday. On Wednesday night, you'll notice a big difference, much cooler and fresher.
I tell you what,
Go on.
Big tip for looking after, particularly kids in the hot weather, pyjamas in the freezer.
Yeah, OK.
Get them out after, get them into it, and it cools them right down.
I love it.
However,
Go on.
what about our furry friends? It's been on my mind. It's been on my mind for a while.
I've been thinking about them. There are a certain kind of animal that probably likes it a bit cooler.
True.
Let's go to Central London.
Let's go to Central London. What about the penguins? Sadia, what can you tell us? Are they OK?
Well, penguins don't have freezers and they also don't have pyjamas, so staying cool overnight is really down to the zoo staff. Here I am at London Zoo, surrounded by penguins. They're so curious. They're all standing behind us in a line and pecking at all of the camera equipment. And we have about 80 penguins here. They're from Chile and also from Peru. And look at them now. They're waiting for their morning breakfast, which is in a couple of hours' time, and they're really curious why there's a film crew in here. But staying cool for them is of utmost importance. We can speak now to Jess, who is the lovely zookeeper here. Jess, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sky News. Tell us a bit about your penguins.
Yes, so we have Humboldt penguins here at the zoo, and like you said, they're from South America, so they quite like the heat, but they also like the cool a little bit as well. So the beaches are hot and the water is quite cool, the Humboldt Current, where they like to swim and fish in, so they're doing all right.
So they're used to the cooler Pacific Ocean. What do you do here to keep them cool?
So we do a few different things. So we've got lots of fans dotted throughout the beach. We'll have a misting system as well that helps to kind of have a sea breeze for them as well. But we also do things like hosing down the beach. They love a sprinkler, they love anything like that. And also ice lollies is a really nice way to encourage them with some enrichment, get them pecking at something in the water and encouraging them into it.
Oh, what flavour ice lollies do they have here?
Plain, no fish. Unfortunately, we also have some very cheeky herons and seagulls that would love to steal a delicious package of fish if they could. So just plain ice is good enough for them.
We can see one of those herons over there, but talk to me a bit about their houses, because they've got these little holes on them. They look like aircon vents. Is that what they are?
No. It's certainly ventilation for them. It's actually a way to drop the humidity inside, because if you can imagine a wet penguin goes in a house, it's going to be very humid in there as well. So it's just to help with the humidity.
So what is their ideal temperature?
They don't really mind, honestly. They really do enjoy these hot, hot summer days, which is great for them. They have a really nice patch of skin on their face that allows them to thermoregulate, so it brings the blood up to their face. They can cool off and then have it back down, but they'll also do things like pant and stuff as well. So they're not really fussy, which is great.
And the sort of good news perhaps for them is that from tomorrow it starts to get cooler, doesn't it?
Good news for them, good news for us keepers as well, because we are definitely struggling in the heat. We're taking lots of breaks, drinking lots of water, wearing lots of sunscreen, all the good stuff, but it is very hot.
Amazing. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Well, here we are. There's the penguins, and you now know how they keep cool with lots of ice lollies, but sadly none that are orange flavour. They're all plain.
They look great, and they're enjoying themselves. They can deal with the heat, they can deal with the cold. Great little animals. Thank you, Sadia, and thanks to London Zoo for accommodating us. We'll see you again soon. Those little guys.
My soul is happy now.
I'm delighted.
Complete.
That's probably the best bit of television I've made in a long time, seeing those penguins. Good fun. Paul, morning.
Don't speak too soon.
I know.
We've always known penguins are cool,
What news do you have, Paul?
Do you want the good news or the bad news?
Good news first.
Go on.
Good news first. Your electricity and gas bills have gone down as of this morning. You won't need your gas on this morning, certainly in the southeast of England. The price cap, we knew this was happening, got told about 8 weeks ago, it's fallen 7%. So the average household, as of today, is paying £1,720, which is about 7% down on what we were paying previously. The bad news, or let's put it the less good news, the regulator this morning has announced approval for a big, the first tranche of a big expansion of the electricity grid. We talked about this before. We know we're adding lots of renewable power, but the grid isn't able to cope with it at the moment. That means we can't take advantage of cheaper renewables. We can see the price cap there on screen, so people can see that small reduction. In order to connect all that new renewable power and hopefully bring down those prices, or at least stop them rising, the grid operators need to spend money off. GEM have approved that today, about £24 billion of investment in gas and electricity. But they say that is going to add £102 to the network costs, which are a portion of our bill, over the next 5 years. So over that period, paying for this expansion, which will hopefully deliver us cheaper bills over time. Guess who's paying? We are, through our bills. They do say that will deliver savings. Again, something we've talked about often, because the grid is overloaded. We can see the makeup here of an energy bill. Let's just help people with this, because it's the bulk of it, 43%, you can see there is wholesale gas prices largely. It's the network cost, that red section, 21%. And we're talking here about half of that is electricity expenses. So that portion will increase. But the Ofgem, the regulator, says it will bring down some other costs. At the moment, power generators are often paid to switch off. their wind farm or their gas-fired power station because the grid simply can't cope. We've got oversupply because you can't switch the renewables on and off. Those savings over time, they said the net cost will be about £24 in due course. But the big picture here is getting to net zero, meeting the government's clean energy plans means a massive expansion of the grid, and in the medium term, consumers are going to have to pay for it.
Absolutely. All right, Paul,
Thanks,
appreciate
Paul.
that, and that was as good as the Penguins. Thank you. Right.
Always.
I'll waddle off.
Thanks so much, Paul. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Donald Trump were hearing that they are set to meet on Monday. This is according to US officials, and this all follows, doesn't it, comments from Mr. Trump suggesting a Gaza ceasefire could be possible within a week, 7 days. At least 60 people were killed in Gaza on Monday amid some of the most intense strikes in weeks. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has suggested DOGE, that's the Department of Government Efficiency, should investigate the agency's former head. That's Elon Musk, as the row between the two over the president's big, beautiful bill continues. Writing on Truth Social, President Trump said this, you won't believe it. He says Elon may get more subsidiary than any human being, subsidies rather, in history. Without subsidiaries, Elon could possibly have to close up shop and head back home to South Africa. Perhaps we should have DOGE take a good hard look at this. Big money to be saved. It's incredible, isn't it?
Falling out again.
They're falling out again. Elsewhere, 20-year-old Wes Rowley, who had once aspired to be a firefighter, has been identified as the shooter. We told you about this yesterday. He took his own life after a manhunt involving hundreds of police officers. Motive remains unclear. Investigation ongoing, of course. Now, more than 140 people are killed or seriously injured in tailgating incidents in England each year. So this is new research, and it's revealing at least 1 in 8 collisions involves a driver failing to leave the proper space between themselves and the vehicle in front. And drivers caught tailgating in England face a £100 fine and 3 penalty points. And this is an interesting one. From Sunday, smoking will be banned on beaches and in public parks across France. This is under new legislation, and it's aimed at shielding children from the dangers of passive smoking. We've heard a lot about this. The ban is part of a broader anti-smoking strategy, which also includes tighter regulations on cigarette sales and expanding no smoking zones in public spaces. Really interesting.
Very interesting that France has decided to do that at that point. I think you still smoke on terraces, can't you, outside restaurants and stuff, but they're going to ban them on the beaches. Right, yeah, thank you for that. Well, we're about to speak to Jonathan Reynolds. He's going to join us very shortly. But before that, let's take a look at the morning's newspapers to see how they are covering what's coming in the Commons later on today. Well, the Financial Times says that watering down the government's welfare changes will cost taxpayers £2.5 billion and push 150,000 people into poverty. Story's also on the front of the Eye, which says the Prime Minister is facing his biggest rebellion yet. Remember, it's the anniversary of this government on Friday. The Daily Mail claims that rebel MPs are set to humiliate Keir Starmer after his attempts to win over those critics. Well, I'm very pleased to say that the Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Jonathan Reynolds, has joined us. Morning to you, Secretary.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for being with us. You've made the concessions. Have you done enough?
Well, I think what we have today is a package of measures which are stronger than what we initially proposed, but fundamentally they are much better than the current system at present. So they protect existing claimants. None of those people will be pushed into poverty because they'll have the same entitlement as they have now. There's some changes in this which are really important: scrapping work capability assessments, having a right to try, protecting people with the most severe conditions, which is really important to me. And at the same time, the future of that system is going to be co-designed with disabled people themselves through the TIMS review, making sure that we are reforming this in a way which, yes, we have to be conscious of the cost of this. I mean, PIP has doubled in cost in the last 5 years. We've got to have public support for any system. But I think fundamentally it's about a better system, because at the minute we spend, I think everyone accepts this, a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money is spent.
The defence budget.
For, £20 billion. It'll go up to £30 billion a year by the end of this Parliament. And no one thinks the outcomes are good. We have 1 in 8 young people who are neat, not in employment or educational training. Got 3 million people out of the workforce for health conditions. So we've got to spend this money better.
Yeah.
I know it's hard, but we shouldn't dodge hard issues.
So, I think everyone would admit that perhaps too much money is being spent. It's the process that you've gone through to get to this point that people are so upset about. You talked about the Stephen Timms review. When is that going to be published?
So that will take some time, to about 18 months.
Some time?
Look, it's hard to put an exact timescale on it because you want to do it properly. You don't want people to think that that has been bounced or decisions have already been taken. It has genuine co-production at the heart of it. If, having made these changes, because they come in November next year, if there are changes to people's circumstances as a result of the Timms review, those claims will then be fast-tracked. So the system will be based around the proposals that are in that.
Right, so that fear that there'll be a three-tier system potentially, because you're going to have those that have been saved by the concessions here, some 370,000 people will keep their entitlements. You're going to have the latest changes, I think, coming in the autumn as well that will change, and then you're going to have the Timms review. There is a fear that there'll be a three-tier system at some point.
I've seen these claims. I don't accept this. So it's entirely normal. It's entirely normal for, when we have significant changes to the welfare state, existing entitlements to be grandfathered. There are people in the UK today getting severe disablement allowance. That closed to new entrants in 2001. So this is quite common. Disability living allowance that PIP replaced. Still, for a lot of people, are on that. So this is how we tend to do it. And actually, I think making sure that you are doing changes that are future-facing, not changing people's existing entitlement, is quite a sound set of principles.
And the argument was made at the weekend was, student finance. Some people got grants, I got student loans, some people got to pay for it all.
There's a lot of parts of that system.
Right, exactly. Things do change through time. I'll accept that point, but those who are against this bill say that you're rushing it through still, because you say that Stephen Timms' review is going to have buy-in from disabled charity groups, campaigners, etc., and yet we don't know what he's going to find. And you've decided on this, and you're going to make your MPs vote today at second reading.
There are lots of this which everybody supports. So there's a big increase in spending on support for people to get them back to work. There are changes, as I say, so protecting people with severe conditions who won't have to be reassessed. I think that is really important. The right to try to give people a chance to get back to work. There's a lot in this, but most of all, there's an urgency for reform. Right? If people think governments will dodge difficult issues, spend a lot of money, even on outcomes they don't think are very good and the public don't support, and if that chance to reform a system is seen to have been lost entirely, that undermines public support for it. And honestly, that is, I want the most vulnerable people protected in this country, and I worry if we aren't willing to look at how it's working at the minute, we'll lose that.
You're making the argument about urgency, but those rebels will say, and not just the rebels, I mean, Andy Burnham, Sadiq Khan, say that you should just take some time, pause it. You've seen the outrage. I mean, 126 of your MPs put their name to that reasoned amendment last week. There's still plenty of disquiet. We don't know what the number will be today. Why not just take a pause over the summer, reflect, get the Timms review in place, and then come back then?
I think we have to show that we're willing to tackle difficult issues, that we're willing to reform a system. Lots of the proposals have a lot of support, and I think we should proceed with those, start to make a change, start to make a difference. I fear if we just were to say, bit difficult this, let's pull away. The idea that we're willing to look at how money is
other
spent.
stuff before.
Well, look, I think
you could do, couldn't you?
The process on this, talking to colleagues, listening to them, that has improved the set of proposals. There's no doubt about that. And as a parliamentarian, I think that is the right way to proceed. But again, you talk to anyone who has perhaps signed that amendment, I'm aware of no one who is saying, this is a great system, it works really well at the minute. And that's what we've got to bear in mind. We're all trying to find a way to protect the most vulnerable people, get people back into work if they need it, recognise the failings that our own constituents tell us of the current system, particularly the way that some of the assessments work in particular. This has long been Labour Party policy to try and reform this system, to try and make it better. This is what we're trying to do. And everyone would support genuine co-production, working with people to get a better system.
Well, I go back to the point that you should wait until you got the full review to make your decisions, but you've said you're not going to do that. You say you're going to protect vulnerable people, but your own government analysis says that some 150,000 people will be pushed into poverty and hardship because of these changes you're about to make.
Nobody has a change to their existing receipt and entitlement. So when we're talking about people being pushed into poverty, no one who's currently receiving this will have their circumstances changed. That impact assessment from the Department of Work and Pensions obviously is an assessment on hypothetical future cases. But it does make absolutely clear that it cannot model the increase in spending on additional support for people to get them back to work. And I would just say, look, we've doubled spending on PIP in the last 5 years. Has that substantially reduced poverty in the UK? I don't think it has. I think anyone is aware of that, having that impact in that way. So yes, I know this is difficult, but I think we've got to recognise at the minute a lot of money is being spent for poor outcomes. We could do that better. But when people are talking about people being pushed into poverty, that's not true. That's not true.
Well,
the existing entitlements will be protected. It's responsible to tell those people.
And I know the government as well said there will be other elements that come through that help people who are most vulnerable. Look, you made the argument forcefully there. You've made it very clear that you don't think more people are going to be pushed into poverty. So that argument's been made to us, it's been made to the viewers. It hasn't been listened to by some of those rebels. So what's going to happen to those people who vote against the government today?
Look, I've been engaged, as you would expect, as a senior cabinet member in conversations with colleagues on a significant piece of legislation. That has been a positive conversation with colleagues about what they want from this process. Again, they want reform. They want the most vulnerable people protected. I think we have worked with people in order to provide that. I'd ask them to support the government on that basis, because clearly what we have got here is something which is better than the existing system. And that's been the only basis of conversations.
Usually people who vote against their government lose the whip.
But look, I mean, I'm not aware of anything like that. And that, to me, right now, feels like sort of questions about Westminster process. What I'm focused on are the issues, are the set of proposals.
Perhaps Westminster process, but also the sort of the authority of this government, your ability to make your MPs, with your huge majority, do the things that you think are most important and in the national interest. And if you can't get all of them together, surely there has to be some kind of punishment for them not backing you.
Well, look, those issues are for the Chief Whip. My role as a Cabinet Minister is to genuinely engage with colleagues in good faith. And that's what we've done. And the package is better.
What have those conversations been like? Have you called them all in? Have you had cups of tea with them? Have you sat down with them? Have you looked at them?
Look, when you have difficult issues, the whole Cabinet, the front bench, is collectively responsible. And look, my bit of this is, of course, I'm responsible for the industrial strategy for jobs. We've got a lot of those. We had great announcements from us last week. Industrial energy prices coming down, finance for business, more powers to shape local economy. So I think we can tell people, I can tell people, this is how we're going to create the jobs, but let's give people the support they need to realise those opportunities, right? That's where more money should be going into, at the same time as we protect people who are vulnerable. Okay. You know, that part of my family is affected by that. That's why I want that system to be in place. But at the minute, I cannot tell you, for all the money we spend, that we're getting the right outcomes for that £20 billion a year.
So, Christo, at this point, is the government in a stronger or weaker position than this time last week, do you think, after all that's happened?
No, I think it's in a stronger position because the proposals are better. But I'd also say, people will say, look, it's a difficult issue, this isn't it, welfare reform, why don't you just not touch it?
No, I don't think they're all saying that. I think people are saying, wait and get it right.
But part of this government, I believe, is to address issues which have been neglected for too long. Whether that's a new runway at Heathrow, whether that's a better trade deal with the European Union, whether it's issues like this. It's always tempting in politics to avoid difficult issues, and what you get to at the end of that are far worse outcomes. Remember, just not long ago, the Conservative Party, which had done nothing on this, got to the election, it was talking about replacing PIP with vouchers or freezing PIP. We've done nothing like that. But we do recognise it needs to work better for the people who receive it. And at the same time, we've got to have public support for that. We've got to be able to tell people we're spending money in the right way.
You've made your argument, you've made your phone calls. Let's see what those against you do later on today when the vote happens. I do want to talk to you as well about your trail today, as we call it, parental leave and changes to that. Why are you deciding to do that at this point?
Well, look, this has been a part of what we call our package about making work pay, manifesto commitment from the Labour Party to, within broadly a year of the government, introduce this. So at the minute we have quite a confusing system of parental leave, and I want people to have the best start in life.
2 weeks, is it, at the moment?
Well, for paternity leave, yes, but obviously there's 8 different parental leave systems in place. So even
broad,
business themselves don't really understand it. I think a lot of people themselves don't understand it. We don't have, compared to other countries, a particularly generous system of, for instance, maternity or paternity leave. And 1 in 3 dads don't take any at all, right? Even it's not very generous and they're not taking it at all, mainly for financial reasons. Shared parental leave, a relatively new thing, hardly anyone is taking that, just 1% of new mums, 4% of new dads. And at the same time, work's changed a lot, so a lot more self-employment, and families have changed. I mean, kinship care is a much bigger thing. So this is a proper, serious piece of work, long-term review, that we haven't had in this country for several decades. And look, I think it's a really important chance to say, how can we do this with business, recognising that they find the system confusing as it is? But how can we give people the best start in life with new babies, whether that's through adoption or new child to adoption or through birth? Really proud of this. It's really important.
Some employers do offer more sort of generous leave as well. You're saying it's going to be a long-term review. You must have an idea how much it's going to cost you at this point.
Well, look, I don't want to be prescriptive. It's got to be proportionate. I think everyone recognises you've got to do that with business, not have costs on it. Businesses themselves are asking for reforms to the system for greater clarity, simplicity. I think that's entirely reasonable as well. But wouldn't we all stand to benefit from a society where we didn't just give people more time with new children, but also culturally had a situation where men and women, in equal measure, saw this as something they were able to do and it wouldn't affect their careers. And it would build a kind of pro-family working environment that I think the UK needs to consider. We need, by the way, on that, more than reforms in this area, building new houses, having decent protections for people in the workplace. This is all part of a package. But as we have this agenda on new jobs, new opportunities, I do think that's got to be consistent with strong families. And this parental review is a part of that.
OK, so it's something that's done in other countries as well. All right, Secretary of State Jonathan Reynolds, thanks very much for that. What time is the vote today?
It will be at the end of the parliamentary day, so probably 7 o'clock.
We look forward to seeing the numbers when they come out. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a look at what's coming up later on in the day. Of course, we are going to be looking in a bit more detail at welfare reform and what it could mean for disabled people. I'm going to be speaking to the Chief Executive of Ofgem as well as that energy price cap falls for the first time in a year. Stay with us.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Well, hello there and welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to hear why some disability campaigners want the government to drop its plans to cut benefits. But first...
I've got the top stories, haven't I? Sir Keir Starmer, he faces an anxious wait to see if MPs will approve his welfare reforms today, with the outcome looking, to be fair, less than clear despite recent concessions. Now, the plans have been met with opposition, including from rebels in the Prime Minister's own party, and with some calling for the reforms to be scrapped entirely. The government's launching what it calls the biggest ever knife amnesty today, with bins being placed in 3 major areas. 37 places to surrender weapons will be installed across London, Manchester and the West Midlands until the end of the month. And another hot day is in store for some parts of England as the ongoing heatwave looks set to bring more sweltering temperatures today. Yesterday was already the hottest opening day of Wimbledon ever, and there will be no let up today, with temperatures set to reach the mid-30s. And Ofgem's price cap has fallen for the first time in a year as energy bills decreased by roughly 7%. The price cap, which sets a maximum rate per unit, will fall by £129 for an average household per year, and this is over the next 3 months.
All right. Thank you for that, Leah. Well, Serena is back with us now. In response to what we heard from the Secretary of State there, I mean, he's forceful in his defence that he thinks this is the right thing to do, that he's had the conversation with the rebels and he just wants them to get on side now. I mean, what did you make of the way that he sort of responded to that ahead of today's vote?
Well, I think it's a tricky position for the government to be in. I mean, they're getting asked questions about whether their own MPs are going to vote for their flagship bill right up to the day. I think that just shows how difficult it's been for them. I think he was saying broadly MPs are on his side in terms of wanting to reform welfare. It's the way that it's being done and the speed at which it's done that MPs are not happy about. So he said that he wanted to make sure that the TIMS review, the PIP review, had time and space to breathe. There was no date on when that will come back. Yet this big policy bill has seemingly been rushed through the Commons, according to lots of MPs. So that seems to be...
He had no response really to that either.
A bit of a discrepancy. And then what if the review comes back with additional changes? He says, well, no individual claimants will miss out. Their individual claims will be fast-tracked. But in terms of the broader policy, that doesn't seem like a cohesive plan. I think also he didn't want to say what will happen to these MPs that will not vote for the bill, whether they'll lose the whip. I've just been texting a couple. They don't think that they're going to lose the whip, so that hasn't explicitly been mentioned.
It seems as if he didn't want to quite say there was going to be a punishment, which, again, as I put to him, that undermines the authority of the government, doesn't it?
Well, it seems like there's no organised whipping situation. Potentially, different MPs are being told different things, but it speaks to how right up to the wire this is going. Potentially, they are still trying to convince MPs right up to this vote, which he outlined was going to be at 7 p.m.
All right, Serena, thanks so much. We're going to speak now to Mickey Earhart, who's a Social Security Policy Officer at Disability Rights. Thanks so much. Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, anytime. Just, Mickey, set out for viewers at home. You know, we've spoken a lot about this vote that's happening later. What can people expect? What are the concessions, and are you happy with them?
I mean, in short, no, we're not happy with them because they're not really concessions. I was speaking to an MP last night and what they told me was, had the bill with these concessions been brought forward as the original bill, they'd be voting against, and all of us and all of our organisations would have been opposed to them, right? You can see it as watering down, but there's still £3 billion worth of cuts to the benefit system that the government wants to bring in. That's not concessions. That's not listening to our community. That's still trying to drive home dangerous cuts that are going to make people's lives worse. But on the sort of practical terms of the concessions, obviously we're glad to see that existing claimants will be protected, which is what the major concession was. There's still lots and lots of working out to do with how that actually works in practice. What does it look like for someone who does a reassessment? There was quite a lot of confusion in the House, actually, during Liz Kendall's statement last night, because she seemed to say something that contradicted the actual official position of the department on reassessment. And also what it looks like for people who maybe they go off the benefit system because they are improving or they don't require the same support, then circumstances change and they require support again. What happens to those people? You know, are they an existing claimant? Are they a new claimant? It's all very confusing right now. And as you've said at the top of the show, MPs are voting this evening on something where almost nobody really understands the full detail because the government hasn't given us much.
Mickey, what are you hearing from people that get in touch that are potentially worried about what might be ahead? Are you hearing stories at the moment at all?
It's heartbreaking what we're hearing. There are people, thousands of people, you know, getting in touch with us. Every organisation that I've spoken to that has like a helpline has had their helpline too busy to handle, right, since the cuts were announced. People are worried, they're anxious. And nothing that the government has said, none of these concessions have made that any better. In all honesty, last night's sort of speeches in the House has confused people even more. They're more worried now than they were a few days ago because it's so confusing. We've never had a two-tiered benefit system like this before. It's unprecedented. It's unprecedented to have something so arbitrary as the date at which you became disabled enough to require support from the government be the thing that determines what level of support you get. And that's really worrying for people.
And broadly speaking, there are voices, aren't there, Mickey, that say, look, this welfare bill, it is ballooning. What would be your advice? Where does the government go next? Because they can't keep supporting a system potentially that's out of control. You know, there's 1 in 8 young people are not in work, they're not in any kind of training. That's an issue too, isn't it?
I guess the two things to remember is that our overall spending on social security, like the whole benefit system, it's been the same since 2008. It's around about 5% of our GDP. That hasn't broadly changed. Specifics within that have, but the overall amount of money we're spending on benefits in this country has been stable for a really long time. But if we're thinking about cost, cutting benefits doesn't save money. It pushes money and cost around the system. Disability Policy Centre, they crunched the numbers right at the start of this. They found about 100 million is all we're going to save, right, as a result of £5 billion worth of cuts, and now £3 billion worth of cuts. It saves 100 million in total because the costs go around the system. They go onto local authorities, onto the health services, people get sicker. You know, it's...
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing, Mickey, is you're not seeing it as what the government say is like reform, trying to make it better. You're seeing it as essentially cuts to make up savings.
Yeah. And I think all of our sort of organisations, our community is pretty united in that. It's pretty obvious to us that this was an arbitrary sort of fiscal measure. There was an amount of money that the government wanted to take out of the system, and they've just been trying desperately to find a way in which to do that. It's had nothing to do with making the system better or fairer. It's been all about taking money out.
OK, we'll leave it there. Really good to get your take, Mickey Hatt, who's a Social Security Policy Officer at Disability Rights UK. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It just shows the difficulty the government finds themselves in trying to get this right for everyone. All right, now, Ofgem have put out their price cap, and it's fallen for the first time in a year as energy bills decreased by 7%. Well, the cap, which sets a maximum rate per unit, will fall by £129 for an average household per year over the next few months. But from next April, some costs will rise to help cover the transition to net zero. I'm very pleased to say we've got Jonathan Brearley, Chief Exec of Ofgem, with us at the desk, and business correspondent Paul Kelso is here too. Paul, good to have you there. Jonathan's looking nervous already. He's right next to him. So look, energy prices are still 40% higher, aren't they, than they were in 2022? Is that just what we're going to have to start dealing with now? The prices are going to be higher generally?
Well, I think the problem is, and I've said this when I've come on this show many times, as Paul knows, is no one can predict the short-term future of prices because we're dependent on this international gas market. Now, it's great news that prices are coming down. But already, since we made that decision, we've seen what's happened in the Middle East between Iran and Israel. Now, imagine that had got worse. That would drive up gas prices and we would see prices increase. And that's why the investment that we're announcing today is so important. I want to see us in a system where prices are much more stable. So what we're announcing today is we want to expand the network, we want to build more renewable energy so that we have a much more stable system. If we get there, that allows customers to be in a much better place.
Just explain to our viewers why we need to have a price cap and why it needs to fluctuate, because there are some calls, you know, I think the Resolution Foundation has called for you to scrap it entirely.
Well, if you go back about 10 years, and I'm afraid I've been in this industry for about 20 years in total, so I've got a long history. When we didn't have a price cap, companies used to take all of their costs and they'd add on a very large profit for those customers that don't really shop around. So even then, Ofgem 20 years ago was saying, please do shop around to get yourself the best deal. There are some customers who can't do that or choose not to. So what this price cap does is it says, look, we are going to try to find the best way to fairly reflect costs, but we do have to change that number when those costs change. And why you're seeing such fluctuation is because the gas market is going up and down. So look, you know, it's good news today, but even today's price is £150 higher than it was this time last year. That's why we want to go to a different system.
You're announcing today this big chunk of investment in the electricity grid, essentially, and gas as well, but let's talk about electricity, to enable, essentially, to plug in all that renewable power. Perhaps you could explain to viewers why that's necessary, and the point here is to get more renewables on, because ultimately that will reduce exposure to gas and bring prices down. Talk people through how that's supposed to work.
Let's talk about what we're doing today. So every 5 years, Ofgem has to decide how much money you invest in your electricity network. That's the wires that brings electricity to your house and the gas pipelines that bring gas to your homes. Now, this money is doing two things, really. First of all, it's making sure that that infrastructure is well maintained. We do have one of the most resilient systems in the world, and we want to keep it that way. But secondly, if we're ever going to get off of this kind of merry-go-round or escalator of the international gas market, we need our energy to come from a different source. And that's why, with the government, We're building more renewable energy to stabilise prices and make sure we don't end up dependent on this world that we don't control.
But to pay for that, we're as consumers going to have to pay that up front. I think you say £104 onto the network costs of bills. I mean, people have to accept higher prices now, hopefully will they be cheaper in future or keep a lid on them?
Well, look, it's £100 over 5 years that we're investing. But I see that as an insurance policy to get us away from this merry-go-round. Now, over time, we do think there are things that will be saved. So if you generate more energy from your wind farms and less from gas-fired power stations, we think that drives the sorts of system we might need. But also, we have a system that isn't big enough for these new wind farms. So if we can make that more efficient, we can make savings for customers. But ultimately, in my mind, this is an investment to get us off of this merry-go-round.
But to be clear, this is essentially a cost of net zero. This is the cost of the government's clean power plans. I mean, to be honest about this, don't we? It is going to cost us money to deliver clean and hopefully more affordable power.
Well, this is ultimately an investment, and the investment comes from all customers, and that will add to our bills, but it will take us away from the situation that we've been in over the last few years. So 2 years ago, I was on this show talking about bills going to £3,600 potentially. We had government putting in £40 to £50 billion just to keep that down to £2,500 for the average household. Going back to 2020, that's almost double what we saw previously. We cannot go back to that. So this investment is needed. Let's get ourselves to a more stable place, and let's make sure British consumers have what they really need, which is a way of getting away from this volatility.
Jonathan, thank you very much for that. Good to see you.
Thank you.
We'll see you later on. Thanks, man.
Brilliant. Still to come on The Breakfast Show. Jackie's at Wimbledon. Jackie, a brilliant opening day for British talent.
It was the most successful day ever. I'm walking backwards because I'm with the queue and I'm going to chat to some guys in a moment. I'm trying to keep track of them. More of the same expected today, and certainly in terms of weather. 33 degrees yesterday, 32 today. It's been a hot queue.
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now. It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon. Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes. Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then. There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits coming in still. We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target. Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, a boat seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa! Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime. They don't care for that. Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to go straight to SW19. Yes. It's Wimbledon.
Day 2.
Here's Jackie.
There, hi, thank you. I am in the... Actually, it looks like I'm standing in an empty field, but I'm not. I mean, turn around here. Look how busy this place is. Thousands and thousands of people here this year. I'm just going to quickly grab these guys because they've been queuing most of the night from Northampton, and they keep moving them, which is really annoying, but it's kind of what happens here. Guys, tell us when you joined the queue, how was it? Is it busier than last year?
It's definitely busier than last year. We got here about 4:10, hoping to get in just for the start of play. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Have you got your sun cream? You look like you need sun cream.
Yeah, lots of sun cream needed for me. It's going to be a long day, so hopefully a bit of shelter on some outside courts.
It's going to be a bad day. It's going to be amazing. Are you looking forward to it? Who you've come to see?
I mean, to be fair, I'm quite looking forward to seeing Bublik. I think that'll be quite a good game.
Yeah. And what about Draper? I know you've got ground passes, so you won't be able to see him because he's on court 1. But, you know, do you rate him as a player? Do you think he's got a chance this year?
I think he's got a really good chance. He's a great player. He's probably one of the most improved players on tour. He's got a great surf of grass. So, yeah, hope he does really well. Obviously.
Yeah, thank you. And what was the night like? Because it was really hot the night before, but you were quite cold.
Yeah, I mean, I was shivering at one point, but it did warm up eventually. But we've had a great night. It's been a great laugh. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, guys, you have a fantastic day, and don't get sunburned and drink lots of water.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sure you'll be drinking lots of something anyway. So yes, good day in store today, but we should flick back yesterday because it was the hottest first day of Wimbledon that we have ever had, 33 degrees, which, you know, didn't seem to bother the Brits because they seemed to scorch through the draw. 7 Brits through to the second round, which is the most successful Wimbledon ever, and hoping for more of the same today. Just to have a look back at what happened yesterday. So late last night, Katie Bolter put out Paula Badoza, the number 9 seed. That was quite late on centre court. She was absolutely thrilled. Very tough. Cam Norrie was through yesterday in a very tough match. Emma Raducanu was uncomfortable in her match against the fellow Brit Mimi Zhu because Zhu's 17 and they just don't like playing each other, Brits. They just find it very awkward. But she is safely through to round 2. Oliver Tarvett, the student who goes to university in the States and can't accept the £99,000 prize money that he has won by getting to the second round. He's living the dream, come through qualifying. He said, if I get a lot of expenses together, maybe I can take some of it. And also Arthur Ferry, who is from Wimbledon, 461 in the world, and he was a wild card into this, and he put out the 20th seed and played right in the heat of the day, 4 sets on court 15, and I asked him what it was like playing in that sort of weather.
I mean, it's better than a windy, cold, rainy day, definitely. Yeah, you just gotta be ready with the hydration and the sunscreen that I didn't put on. But no, it was nice. I didn't stuff it too much. I guess if it had gone down to the 5th, it would have been a bit tougher.
And Jackie, morning to you. It looks like a lovely day again for you guys. They did really well yesterday, didn't they? And I suppose that sets up the next couple of weeks, and there'll be all that expectation now building on some of their shoulders.
Yeah, it's actually great fun in the first week when the Brits actually do well because, you know, you build different stories and it might not necessarily be the ones that you think that are the great story to follow. I mean, I'm still loving this Ollie Tarvett story, you know, the student from an American university got a wild card into qualifying and, you know, he's in Wimbledon, he's on the start line and he wins. You know, what's he going to do next? Well, I'll tell you, he's playing Carlos Alcaraz next. So he's going from university tennis 1 week to Wimbledon, probably centre court when he plays his next round on Wednesday. It's absolutely extraordinary, and it just doesn't get better than that as far as stories go in tennis. Today you've got Jack Draper, the British number 1, the world number 4 in action. He's got a very tough draw, but today he should be okay. He's against Baez of Argentina, and Jack's had the most incredible year. So everybody in the draw, I mean, everybody will be frightened to play him. And we're guaranteed a Brit into the second round, whatever happens, because Dan Evans is playing Jay Clark. and they are teammates. Dan Evans, former British #1, has kind of fallen down quite a bit and almost playing his tennis in Division 1 in football terms, I suppose, and trying to build back his ranking. And he got very emotional in his press conference at the weekend because he said, I was just thinking, I bet all my family were looking at me last year thinking, what on earth are you doing playing at this level? But he's had a couple of great wins in the last couple of weeks and is way back on the way up. So looking out for him and wishing him good things. And as well, Coco Gauff is playing, and Djokovic in possibly his last Wimbledon, going for his 8th Wimbledon and his 25th Grand Slam title.
Plenty of good tennis still to come. Jackie, thank you so much for now. We'll speak to you again later on. Enjoy the King, although it just looks like people are standing in that field. I think it looked very orderly, did it?
I should have asked Jackie about inflation at Wimbledon.
Oh,
strawberries and cream have gone up, so I'm going to write that down.
Yeah,
and
remember that when the next hour. All right. Well, it looks lovely in SW19. What about the rest of the country?
The perfect climate, wherever the destination. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, we came close to the highest temperature of the year so far yesterday, but it looks a bit cooler today. Mainly dry at first, but clouds stretching from the Irish Sea into eastern Scotland could bring some rain. The south is going to be muggy once again. Well, central Britain, eastern Scotland and the rest of Ireland will stay quite cloudy this morning with a few more showery outbreaks possible, mainly in the north. Most other places, though, dry and sunny. It'll be cooler generally, still hot and humid in the southeast.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
All right, well, stay with us. Plenty more to come on The Breakfast Show this morning, where next hour we'll, of course, look at those welfare reforms and that vote later in Parliament. But before, look at these guys.
It's all about the penguins down at London Zoo. Sadia Chowdhury's there for us, talking about just how animals are coping in the heat wave. They are so wonderful.
Yeah, they are.
They're quite interested, aren't they, in the Sky News camera that's
Maybe
down there today.
we should get them on for a little interview. I wonder what they've got to say about the welfare bill and whether or not the government will win in the House of Commons later.
Which one? To the left they'll win, to the right they won't.
So Sandy was telling us as well, they eat ice lollies as well. She was asking whether they have special flavours, but no, I think they're fish-flavoured ice lollies, which don't sound very appetising, but I'm sure they are delicious for penguins.
Beautiful stuff.
All right, plenty more to come in the next hour of the show. Stay with us.
We're rolling. Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
good morning. It is 8 a.m. and on today's show, the Prime Minister struggles to win over rebel MPs ahead of today's crucial vote on benefit cuts.
Are the government confident they'll win? They'll get no help from the Conservatives, who we'll hear from in the next few minutes.
Plus, it's day 2 of Wimbledon and all eyes on British player Jack Draper as he takes on Sebastian Baez.
It is Tuesday, the 1st of July. Keir Starmer faces the biggest revolt of his premiership over welfare, with Labour rebels accusing the government of breaking promises. The UK's largest ever knife surrender scheme launched today. We've got a special report on the reality of knife crime. Europe bakes under a heat dome with temperatures of more than 40 degrees, and here in the UK, we can expect another scorcher.
And we're at London Zoo this morning to find out how the animals are being kept cool. It is day 2 of Wimbledon. I am in the queue where thousands of people have been queuing since the early hours. These people to get a ground pass today, where it's expected to be another sweltering hot day, 31 degrees later here at Wimbledon. But if the British players do the business, they will be delighted. 7 through yesterday.
Good morning and welcome to The Breakfast Show. The Prime Minister is in a last-ditch battle to persuade Labour MPs to back his welfare reforms. Some backbench rebels say the concessions agreed last week don't go far enough and have warned that they could create a 3-tier benefit system. Well, speaking to Sky News this morning, Jonathan Reynolds, the Business and Trade Secretary, told us that it's just not true to say that people will be pushed into poverty by the changes. We'll hear from Serena in just a moment. But first, here is what Jonathan Reynolds had to say to me a short time ago.
No one thinks the outcomes are good. We have 1 in 8 young people who are NEET, not in employment or educational training. Got 3 million people out of the workforce for health conditions. So we've got to spend this money better.
Yeah.
I know it's hard, but we shouldn't dodge hard issues.
So, I think everyone would admit that perhaps too much money is being spent. It's the process that you've gone through to get to this point that people are so upset about. You talked about the Stephen Timms review. When is that going to be published?
So that will take some time, to about 18 months.
Some time?
Look, it's hard to put an exact timescale on it because you want to do it properly and you don't want people to think that that has been bounced or decisions have already been taken. It has genuine co-production at the heart of it. If, having made these changes, because they come in November next year, if there are changes to people's circumstances as a result of the Timms review, those claims will then be fast-tracked. So the system will be based around the proposals that are in that.
Right, so that fear that there'll be a 3-tier system potentially, because you're going to have those that have been saved by the concessions here, some 370,000 people will keep their entitlements. You're going to have the latest changes, I think, coming in the autumn as well, that will change, and then you're going to have the Timms review. There is a fear that there'll be a 3-tier system at some point.
I've seen these claims. I don't accept this. So it's entirely normal. It's entirely normal for, when we have significant changes to the welfare state, existing entitlements to be grandfathered. There are people in the UK today getting severe disablement allowance. That closed to new entrants in 2001. So this is quite common. Disability living allowance that PIP replaced. Still, for a lot of people, are on that. So this is how we tend to do it. And actually, I think making sure that you are doing changes that are future-facing, not changing people's existing entitlement, is quite a sound set of principles.
And the argument was made at the weekend was, student finance. Some people got grants, I got student loans, some people got to pay for it all.
There's a lot of parts of that system.
Right, exactly. Things do change through time, I'll accept that point, but those who are against this bill say that you're rushing it through still, because you say that Stephen Timms' review is going to have buy-in from disabled charity groups, campaigners, etc., and yet we don't know what he's going to find. And you've decided on this, and you're going to make your MPs vote today at second reading.
There are lots of this which everybody supports. So there's a big increase in spending on support for people to get them back to work. There are changes, as I say, so protecting people with severe conditions who won't have to be reassessed. I think that is really important. The right to try to give people a chance to get back to work. There's a lot in this, but most of all, there's an urgency for reform. Right? If people think governments will dodge difficult issues, spend a lot of money, even on outcomes they don't think are very good and the public don't support, and if that chance to reform a system is seen to have been lost entirely, that undermines public support for it. And honestly, that is, I want the most vulnerable people protected in this country, and I worry if we aren't willing to look at how it's working at the minute, we'll lose that.
You're making the argument about urgency, but those rebels will say, and not just the rebels, I mean, Andy Burnham, Sadiq Khan, say that you should just take some time, pause it. You've seen the outrage. I mean, 126 of your MPs put their name to that reasoned amendment last week. There's still plenty of disquiet. We don't know what the number will be today. Why not just take a pause over the summer, reflect, get the Timms review in place, and then come back then?
I think we have to show that we're willing to tackle difficult issues, that we're willing to reform a system. Lots of the proposals have a lot of support, and I think we should proceed with those, start to make a change, start to make a difference. I fear if we just were to say, oh, bit difficult this, let's pull away, the idea that we're willing to look at how money is
other
spent.
stuff before.
Well, look, I think
you could do, couldn't
the process on this, talking to colleagues, listening to them, that has improved the set of proposals. There's no doubt about that. And as a parliamentarian, I think that is the right way to proceed. But again, you talk to anyone who is perhaps signing that amendment, I'm aware of no one who is saying, this is a great system, it works really well at the minute.
Well, Mikey Earhart is from Disability Rights UK. He says he's still concerned about the plan changes.
Every organisation that I've spoken to that has like a helpline has had their helpline too busy to handle, right, since the cuts were announced. People are worried, they're anxious, and nothing that the government has said, none of these concessions have made that any better. In all honesty, last night, some sort of speeches in the House has confused people even more. They're more worried now than they were a few days ago because it's so confusing. We've never had a two-tiered benefit system like this before. It's unprecedented. It's unprecedented to have something so arbitrary as the date at which you became disabled enough to require support from the government be the thing that determines what level of support you get. And that's really worrying for people.
Well, Serena's here with us now. So, Serena, look, we're seeing there from Mikey just the difficulty that disabled campaigners and disabled people broadly feel they're going to face with these changes, yet the government going to push ahead with it despite the anger.
Yeah, there isn't a single disability charity who has a kind word to say about these reforms. And I think both of those clips speak to the speed at which people think these reforms have been brought in or been trying to be brought in. And that's pretty much MPs' main concern. So you've got about 35 rebels today, Labour MPs, who probably won't vote for it. But there probably are negotiations behind the scenes for the other few that have worrying doubts about it. I think, as you rightly pointed out to the Minister, that reviews haven't even been concluded and finished yet on this policy, but yet they think they needed to tackle difficult issues, they say, to reform the system already, and MPs are really uncomfortable with that. And then not answering on what the ramifications are for those MPs, whether they'll have the whip removed, I think just adds even further confusion to MPs. So we think the bill will go through with sort of a chunky 35-ish rebels, but we'll only find out until later tonight.
Yeah, we will. That vote coming later after the day's business is settled in the Commons. Serena, for now, thank you so much for that. And we're going to be speaking very shortly to the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Helen Whately, to get her thoughts on today's vote now that the Conservatives have said they're going to vote against it.
Yeah. Elsewhere, the UK's largest ever surrender scheme for knives is being launched today. Sky's Tom Parminter has been to a hospital in Manchester and spoken to one victim of knife crime and then also the frontline teams who worked to save him.
I've never in my life been stabbed, so I don't know how it's meant to even feel. So initially, the pain came when I realised the blood's just spitting out the side of my ribcage, and that's when I start panicking. All I could hear was everybody screaming around me, about 10 voices, you know. I just felt like as though I was slowly slipping away. My lungs felt like they were filled with blood, where I couldn't breathe. I thought that each breath that I take, I'm gonna drown in my own blood.
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
I'd say even for the perpetrators, it is not worth it, man. Because once you decide to carry a knife, trust me, it ends two ways. Either you stab someone or you get stabbed.
You should have the right to feel safe and protected wherever you are, so don't blame yourself for what happened. We are going to be there to help you.
Favour is here to offer support beyond the physical injuries. She's not here to judge. The police are investigating what's happened.
Favour has shown me that you don't have to be alone in a situation like this.
Well, you can watch the full version of Tom's really powerful report online. I think you can scan the QR code that's going to pop up on the side of the screen pretty soon.
Yeah, and we're going to go to, well, it's a scorcher of a day, isn't it?
Another
And
warm
two
weather.
places where it's really being felt, Wimbledon, SW19, and London Zoo. All of the animals there, a real challenge to keep them cool. Let's go first to Sadia, because she's at the penguin enclosure at London Zoo. So how are the team coping there, Sadia? And I hear rumours of fish lollipops.
Not fish lollipops, but the penguins here are really hot. That's what we're being told by the zookeepers here. Yesterday, temperatures were around 33 degrees, I'm told, and it is quite unbearable. But luckily, they are surrounded by lots of shade. There are also fans around here and a really cool pool that they can take a dip in. I'm going to show you some of these penguins now. They're very curious. They've all lined up in a row as soon as they saw the cameras. And when we get close, you might find them coming straight up into the lens. So these are Humboldt penguins. They are from Peru and Chile, so perhaps used to warmer temperatures. But of course, the Pacific Ocean is a much cooler ocean, and here the temperature is around, I think, 23 degrees in the water. We can find out more about them from zookeeper Jess, who joins me now. Jess, tell us a bit about these penguins.
Yes, so we have South American penguins, Humboldt penguins, which are the best penguins by far. But they have a lot of really cool adaptations to deal with the heat, fortunately for them. They live on beaches. They have really cool water that they dive into, though. So they have things like the pink fleshy patches on their faces that help them to thermoregulate, so it brings the warm blood up and they can cool down really easily. Their feathers are adapted to keep their bodies dry, so they're not soaking wet all the time as well. But they also pant like dogs, which is great. So whatever they can do to keep themselves cool. But obviously swimming is the best thing to keep cool, I think, for them.
And you've been helping them stay cool as well, haven't you? Talk to us about what you've been doing in particular with the ice lollies.
Yes, so we do provide ice lollies for the penguins. It's just frozen ice, nothing special in it, but it's something that's different in the pool, so it encourages them to go explore, do something different, see something a bit sometimes scary, sometimes new, and it's really nice for them to encourage them into the water to go spend some time doing something a bit different.
Shall we give them some lollies? Because you've got some here, and just a reminder, they're not fish flavoured, they're just plain lollies. And how does this help cool them down?
Well, it cools the water around them, which is nice, but also them just being in the pool is what cools them down. That's the most important thing, is keeping them swimming as much as possible. They do it on their own, but sometimes they need a bit of encouragement.
Great. Shall we throw some in and see what happens? So we'll just throw some lollies, see if the penguins like it. And it is going to start getting cooler from tomorrow. They're all sort of like wondering, why are we getting lollies and not breakfast?
I'm hugely disappointed that those discs, those frozen discs, are not fish flavoured.
I've got to hold my hands up. I think I may have made that up, that they have fish flavoured lollies.
I can't believe
Sorry about that, Sadia. Sorry
under the bus
to everyone
with
at
that.
London Zoo, and sorry to those little penguins for thinking that they were having fish flavoured lollies, even though they would be delicious, I'm sure, for the penguins.
Oh,
all right,
the cutest.
Let's step away from central London and go to the southwest, where Jackie is in. You still in the queue, Jackie, at Wimbledon? Yes, there we are. Looking good there. And how are people getting on at this time in the morning? It looks nice and warm.
Sweltering.
Yes, well, there's actually thousands of people in the queue. I think the queue's even bigger than it was last year because of the weather, because people know that they're not going to be queuing in the rain, which is always miserable. Not so this year. It was pretty muggy overnight, although having spoken to a few of the queuers, and all these guys here behind me, they will all be getting ground passes because the Centre Court and Court 1 people have already gone in. So they'll be very much exposed to the sun today. Saw lots of umbrellas yesterday, lots and lots of fans. And these guys will, if you're into the ground, it's going to be very, very hot. Let's have a little quick chat with these girls. They've been queuing since the early hours. Hello, girls. What time did you come down at?
It was just before 5.
And what was the weather like then? Because it's actually boiling now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so hot. It was a bit chilly to start off with, to be fair. We weren't really expecting that.
Yeah, now we've got the umbrella.
Yeah.
Our frozen water bottle.
Yeah, so what else have you done to prepare? You've got your...
Some cards, some entertainment, some sun cream.
Fan, handheld fan.
Yeah.
All the gear.
Yeah, all the gear. And what are you hoping to see? Are you going to go and sit on Henman Hill, which is super, super exposed and super, super hot?
Yeah. I think we're going to try and hopefully get onto one of the good courts and see some good tennis. But then if not, the hill would be great.
Strawberries and cream on the hill.
Yeah. Fun.
It's actually a great day to come to Wimbledon, isn't it?
Yeah, we're so excited.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like the world's biggest picnic that you pay £30 to get into. And I think today, yesterday was so fantastic with 7 Brits getting through. Hoping for more of the same today. It's going to be a really good day for the fans because of the weather, but pretty much only if you've got one of these fan.
Jackie, thank you so much. I'd love to be down at Wimbledon.
Oh, it looks real nice down there.
Looks great.
For now,
but
what a great way to spend the day.
There is a broader picture to really take into context, isn't it? Joe's joined us, our meteorologist, because across Europe, it's really, really scorching, isn't it, there too?
It really has been hot.
And then just staying in the UK briefly, it's not hot everywhere.
No, it's not. And we did have widespread, into the low 30s yesterday across England, even up into northern England, getting to the low 30s there. Today, the main heat is across sort of southeastern parts of the UK, so slightly cooler air moving in. An area southeast of a line from sort of Exeter across to Norwich. Southeast of that line, we'll probably see higher temperatures than yesterday, and then sort of further north and west of that, probably lower temperatures than yesterday. We got to 33 yesterday, could get to 34 degrees Celsius today. Small chance of reaching 35 degrees Celsius. That's not a record. We're now into July, so the record stands at 40.3 degrees Celsius, which we saw.
What's the record in
Record
July?
for July. Do you remember a few years ago?
It was 40 degrees.
There were wildfires taking off in like Twickenham.
I was at that time, I was in Cyprus at that time, positively breezy conditions.
Chilling.
Watching Sky News, and the helicopters were out and the wildfires.
I was outside in the heat reporting on it. Yeah, no, it was hot, really hot. And
That's
I
not
didn't
bad.
think I'd be talking about 40-degree heat. Not yet.
That was a few years ago
quite
now.
incredible. Yeah,
I mean,
2022.
The chance it could come back, I guess. We're going to have temperatures that keep
always
ticking
the
up.
chance. Yeah, no.
And they're getting that high in Europe, aren't they, at the moment?
Yes,
So
Spain and Portugal now have both broken their June records. 46 and 46.6, I think, was in Portugal. France today, there's red warnings for parts of France today. Could see 40 degrees in Paris. So, yes, some extreme temperatures across parts of Europe, and that high-pressure system is moving further east over the next few days, so high temperatures spreading further east through the week. So, yes, a lot going on, significant heat for Europe, and then, like you say, we're having some high temperatures. Last day today, though, tomorrow we will see fresher conditions for all. And it's been uncomfortable to sleep, hasn't it?
Yes.
So, certainly by Wednesday night, it'll be much cooler for sleeping.
Get a decent bit of rest to get up at 2 in the morning to do the show.
Completely.
Joe,
Thank
really
you, Joe.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, no worries.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are going to speak, as I said, to Helen Whately, Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary. But before that, let's take a look at the front pages of the morning's newspaper to see how some of those guys are dealing with what's coming in the Commons later. Well, the Financial Times says the government is watering down welfare changes, and that'll cost taxpayers £2.5 billion and could push 150,000 people into poverty. Story is also on the front of the Eye, which says the Prime Minister's facing his biggest rebellion yet. The Daily Mail claims Rebel MPs are set to humiliate Keir Starmer today after his attempts to win over critics fell flat. And I'm pleased to say Helen Whately is with us now, Shadow Work and Pension Secretary. Helen, good morning to you. Thanks so much for being with us. So I think now, what are we, Tuesday morning before the vote? The Conservative Party now know which way they're going to vote.
Yeah, we've been clear we are going to vote against this legislation. We offered Keir Starmer some guidance on what he could do to get our support and how he needed to fix what he's put before Parliament, but he didn't take us up on our suggestions and instead he's capitulated to his rebels. And what we're seeing here was it was already rushed, it was already ambitious, and as a result of the government's U-turn, it's saving even less. But actually, this is about more than welfare, because the government's economic credibility is at stake. Rachel Reeves came into power saying that she needed to be fiscally disciplined and that she was going to make cuts to public spending. She has killed growth with her tax rises, and then she's U-turned now on both of her two main ways of making savings, on winter fuel and now on welfare, and I think we have more U-turns to come. So she has no economic credibility, and I think it's inevitable that in the autumn she's either going to end up borrowing more or putting up taxes, which is the last thing that the economy needs. We're seeing how much damage her tax rises are already doing. And on the Prime Minister's side, I mean, he simply can't govern the country. He can't control his party. He can't make difficult decisions. Just 1 year into his leadership, he's effectively a lame duck Prime Minister.
OK, well, you've made your attack. I mean, you guys couldn't even tell us over the weekend whether or not you'd vote against this bill, which you've now clearly come to the point of. You suggest that he's capitulated. I mean, he's made concessions, they would say. What would the Conservatives do differently? I mean, you'd want the welfare bill to come down, and that's what this legislation will do.
Well, yeah, we're clear that we think there should be much greater savings, and we said in our manifesto that we would commit to at least 12 billion of savings at that time. We say this bill, as originally presented, was only 5 billion of savings. It's now down to between 2 and 2.5 billion. So, that's halved in the savings. It would get absolutely nobody into work as well. That's the government's impact assessment says that. So things that we would do, make much more substantial reforms. But there are things that I've said that Keir Starmer can do here and now to bring down the cost. So, for instance, reforming the SIT notes or fit note system, which is the way that many people get onto the benefit system in the first place. Labour paused and cancelled the reforms that we had in progress on that. Reforming the assessment process and particularly bringing assessments back to being face-to-face for these kind of benefits as they were before the pandemic. Yep. And thirdly, controlling the rise in benefit claims for common mental disorders. And I know that those are real and people really struggle with some of the mental health problems that they're experiencing. However, that is the number one reason why people are now claiming benefits, and it's got to be brought under control.
I mean, that 12 billion that you look to save, you'll know the IFS at the time said it looks really, really challenging to be able to get anywhere near that because of the reforms that would be needed. The change to having people having face-to-face consultations versus telephone was a Conservative policy change that you guys brought in. And you talk about credibility of their economic plan. I mean, it's a government that was led by Liz Truss at one point.
Well, I mean, on the point about the 12 billion, and I mean, I'll make no mistake about it, making savings on welfare is hard because you want to make sure you've got a system that continues to support people with disabilities but doesn't support... Well, sorry, you asked me a question, so I was responding it.
Go ahead.
You want to make sure you've got a system that supports those with disabilities but actually make sure those who can work do work, and we have plans for how to do that, and I talked about that a moment ago. And on the face-to-face, yes, we did in the pandemic, of course, go to telephone assessments because you had people who were unwell who couldn't come in for something face-to-face. That was a risk of COVID. But now that's something that needs fixing.
Would you bring it back face-to-face?
So, yeah, we think that all assessments should go back to being face-to-face. Now, the government has said they're going to move in that direction, but they've not made anything like such a bold commitment on that, and they really should be.
Helen Whaley, you had a chance after the pandemic finished to bring back face-to-face. I mean, we all lost those masks many, many years ago, and you guys were in power. You could have done it then, but you didn't.
So we were working on that, but no, it's a gradual thing, and one of the things I know is that there were substantial backlogs, a number of people waiting for assessments, and so partly because of that, the telephone assessments continued, but now, we're that far down the line, and it's clear, it's really clear, things change as well. The rise in these claims, particularly for common mental health disorders, is relatively new. We originally, we brought the welfare bill right under control during our time of government up to the pandemic, so it's relatively new. As I say, we had reforms in place. The government has either postponed or cancelled those. They need to get a grip on this.
Helen Whaley, as you rightly point out, things do change, but you did have time in government at the back end of the pandemic and before you lost the election last year to make these changes, which you didn't. It's very easy to say these things in opposition, as you perhaps would have had the Labour Party saying them against you. Isn't the real fact of the matter is that you're carping from the sidelines, trying to vote against the government when you don't really have a credible idea of what you would do differently?
Not at all. I mean, as I said, I at the time was a health minister working with our Secretary of State Mel Stride at the time for Work and Pensions on exactly this, like the fit note reforms. You had pilots taking place, which the government literally have just stopped in their tracks. They've abandoned things that were happening. That's why I'm so frustrated that they are making the situation worse. And I think, we have been clear. Here are some things that they could do here and now. We're trying to be helpful because this is, how can I put it? It's just so serious for the country.
No,
I mean, the welfare bill has to be brought under control. We've got to get people off benefits and into work, and they've got to find a way to balance the books.
Yeah, it's very serious, and it's a chance for the bill to be brought down, and you're against it. Under the Conservative plan, how many people would lose their personal independence payments? How many people would be pushed into poverty?
Look, to be clear, we're in opposition. I don't have all the figures and the hundreds of civil servants.
Now.
So one of the things I'm pointing at is, as I said, the rising claims for common mental disorders like often anxiety, mild depression, some of the neurodiversity reasons for claiming like ADHD to be brought under control. The Centre for Social Justice.
What does that mean, brought under control?
Sorry, Centre for Social Justice has been doing work on this, and they've estimated up to £9 billion could be saved. So there is analysis.
What do you mean by
there is
bringing it under
analysis?
control?
I'll come to that. There is analysis behind these figures that people can go and look at. But obviously, as the job of opposition is to do also note that some hard work on what we would plan to do as and when the next election happens, so that we've got a better offer to the country. And that's why I'm trying to set out direction of travel, and as I say, make suggestions to the government about what they could do here and now to fix some of the problems they're facing.
Do you think there are people who are getting benefits that just don't deserve them?
But I've been looking into how the assessment process works, and I've been talking to people with disabilities, and I hear on the one hand from people with disabilities who say, the assessment process is stressful, it's difficult, they're really worried, they feel that they aren't being understood. But on the other hand, say it's clear hearing about how it works for telephone assessments that the assessors aren't able to check whether what people are saying is really their situation. They don't check that, they take people at their words, and there is a risk, therefore, that some people may be abusing the system. And we see this thing with sickfluencers, that you can look up what you have to say in order to...
Sickfluencers.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
You can look up what you have to say to claim your benefits. This is something the government has to act on. In fact, they already voted against an amendment we put down to try and stop the sickfluencers situation happening. So they've got to take action.
So some people are getting these benefits that don't deserve them, in your opinion? People are abusing the system?
Yeah, it looks like that. And the problem with abuse of the system is it means then that there isn't the support there, or there can't potentially in future be the support there for those who really need it. The situation we're in is the bill is going up to around £100 billion.
So vote with the government later then, they're going to bring it down.
End of the decade.
So vote with the government later, you can bring it down.
Come on, it's going up to £100 billion by the end of the decade. What the government's doing is £2.5 billion worth of cuts, and they're also creating this two-tier system where you'll get a different treatment whether you've just been diagnosed or whether you were diagnosed in the past. Actually, the problem with that is it's going to effectively create a welfare trap, where if people's conditions fluctuate, they're meant to let the government know that they don't necessarily need benefits for a period, but actually this will deter them from doing that, because they know that if they come back again later, they'll end up on less.
Helen Whaley, Shadow Working Pension Secretary, really good to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. Let's take a look at the weather. It's very warm out there.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, we came close to the highest temperature of the year so far yesterday, but it looks cooler today. Mainly dry for the first half of the day, but extensive cloud will stretch from the Irish Sea into eastern Scotland, and that could bring with it a little patchy rain. The south will be muggy once again. Central Britain, eastern Scotland and the east of Ireland will stay cloudy this morning, with a few more showery outbreaks possible, mainly in the north. Most other places, dry and sunny. It'll be cooler generally, still hot and humid though in the southeast. Eastern Scotland and northern England will see showers pepping up during the afternoon with a chance of thunderstorms.
A bright start and always a warm welcome. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
All right, still to come this morning on The Breakfast Show. The Prime Minister could face a major rebellion in the Commons later on today over his reforms to the welfare system.
gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Well, hello there and welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we're going to hear from a Labour MP who says she cannot support the government today on its welfare reform bill.
Yeah.
First, Leah's got the top stories.
Yeah, thank you. Sir Keir Starmer, he's facing the biggest revolt potentially if MPs approve his welfare reforms today, and the outcome's looking, well, it's less than clear. This is despite recent concessions, and the plans have been met with opposition, including from rebels in the Prime Minister's own party, with some calling for the reforms to be scrapped entirely. Also, the government's launching what it calls the biggest ever knife amnesty today, with bins being placed in 3 major areas. 37 places to surrender weapons will be installed across London, Manchester and the West Midlands until the end of the month. Another hot day is in store for some parts of England as the ongoing heat wave looks set to bring more sweltering temperatures today. Yesterday was already the hottest opening day of Wimbledon ever, and there'll be no let up today, with temperatures set to reach the mid-30s. And Ofgem's price cap has fallen for the first time in a year as energy bills go down by 7%. The price cap, which sets a maximum rate per unit, will fall by £129 for an average household per year, and this is over the next 3 months.
Now, later on today, dozens of MPs will head into the Commons and potentially vote against the government's plans for the welfare reform bill. Now, despite making concessions, Sir Keir Starmer is facing the biggest rebellion of his premiership so far. Now, joining us now is Nadia Whittome, Labour MP for Nottingham East. Nadia, morning to you. Can we call you a rebel? Are you a backbench rebel?
Well, I'd rather not be. I'd rather the government pulled the bill and we didn't have to be in this position. I think MPs from right across the party are furious about being forced to choose between loyalty to our party and loyalty to our constituents, because we'd hoped that those two things would never conflict, especially when it comes to, you know, the fundamentals, the basics. But if our party is being steered down the wrong path, and if it won't listen, then many of us will side with our constituents and with Labour values.
I mean, the government have said they have listened. They've made their concessions from last week. They've actually changed it so those that are on current benefits on PIP won't lose their benefits. And they're saying that there's going to be a review led by Stephen Timms that will tell us exactly how the reform should be done. And that's going to be done in conjunction with disability rights groups. They've made their concessions, and it's you guys now who won't come.
The concessions aren't enough, and I think it's very telling that not a single disabled people's organisation supports the bill, even since the concessions. There's a lot that we don't know about how that will work in practice, but what we do know is that anybody scoring less than 4 points in any category in their PIP assessment will not be eligible for support. That includes people who need help cutting up food, need help dressing, washing below the waist. They will no longer be eligible for PIP in future. And by the government's own calculations, that could push 150,000 people into poverty. It's actually likely to be much higher. That is what MPs are voting on today. We're voting on the bill unamended, in a process that is being rushed through Parliament with very little scrutiny.
I spoke to the Secretary of State, Jonathan Reynolds, earlier, and he just disagrees that 150,000 will push into...
Well, those are the government's own statistics.
He says that there will be extra support that comes in later on in the Parliament that supports
government hasn't provided the evidence for that. I know that the government will say that even their own statistics are not accurate because it doesn't take account of the number of people who will be helped into work. but the government hasn't provided evidence of how many people will be helped into work, and PIP is not an out-of-work benefit anyway.
Do you accept that the welfare bill has to come down?
I think that, obviously, I want to see fewer people sick, and I think that what Liz Kendall said yesterday at the dispatch box was absolutely right, that there is a clear link between austerity and health inequality. But obviously, the conclusion of that is not to make further cuts. That is just going to make the situation worse. The way that we, in the long term, reduce welfare spending is by tackling the root causes of sickness, of poverty and inequality, not cutting people's benefits.
And I know that many of you guys who have signed the amendment, the Reasoned Amendment from last week, and perhaps this new one now as well, are concerned about the processing of all of this. Jonathan Reynolds, again, sitting right where you are, said that you've got to tackle it now. You've got to get ahead of it. You've got to start dealing with this problem now because the bill is just too high.
This is a false politically imposed deadline to try to stifle a rebellion, which, as I've said, MPs would rather not be doing anyway. We just want the government to pause this, consult properly with disabled people and come back to the table with a proper proposal that protects people's dignity and supports them. But the process it's a shambles. And MPs, even MPs who are very reluctantly voting with the party out of party loyalty, agree that it's a shambles. We don't have all of the information that we need from the government, no impact assessment, no OBR analysis, the Timms review hasn't been published, the Mayfield review hasn't been published, the government hasn't provided its own projections of... So the government's main argument, right, is that this will help people into work. It hasn't said how many people it expects to be helped into work.
So you think
and actually
lying? Sorry, do you just think they're just lying to you then? Do you think they're just being completely disingenuous about this? Because their argument would be that this has to be done at this point, right now, to make sure that the bill comes down, and then further work will come on once the Timms review is published.
So I can't believe that the government's argument could really be that we need... total lack of scrutiny of this bill for it to be rushed forward today, and then next week we have all remaining stages in one single day instead of over a number of weeks where you'd hear from experts and people with lived experience. To put it in a money bill, which means that it goes through the Lords with very little scrutiny, money bills are meant to be for things that are uncontroversial. That also sets a dangerous precedent for future governments, because you could argue that anything is a money bill because anything means the government spending money, and therefore nothing should have proper scrutiny. What we're voting on today is the bill as it stands, and the government can't even make the argument that there's scope to change it in remaining stages.
There's a question about
that's happening in 8 days in one single day.
There's a question about the government's authority in all of this as well. If they can't win around their MPs when they've got such a huge majority, not even a year into government yet, there's a question about their authority being undermined. What do you expect should happen to people that vote against the government?
I hope that we will be listened to, as we haven't been previously. We've been raising the alarm for months now, and it's not just backbenchers, it's not just those on the left of the party, it's ministers as well. And we, and crucially disabled people in the organisations representing them, have been ignored. So I hope that this will trigger a rethink for the government and a change in direction, and that we return to our values.
Are you prepared to lose the whip over this?
I don't expect to lose the whip over it. I don't expect that they will take the whip over from dozens and dozens of MPs.
OK. Nadia Whittam, really good to have you here this morning. Thank you very much.
Thanks
good morning to you. Thank you. All right.
Now, the late Queen's favourite mode of transport from Buckingham Palace has confirmed now that the royal train is to be scrapped, and it's in favour of 2 helicopters. That's as the royal family applies what it calls fiscal discipline to deliver value for money. Here's our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills.
It was once Queen Elizabeth's favourite way to travel. Now the royal train has reached the end of the line. Used only twice last year, the decision has been made to take it out of action. The bill to bring it up to date seemed to be too much, meaning that in a couple of years it's destined to potentially become a museum piece. It's the cost of other travel that is likely to raise eyebrows. Remember this trip to Australia and then on to Samoa last year? Flights for the King and Queen and their staff cost over £400,000. Just part of a £4.7 million travel bill the royal family racked up travelling abroad and across the UK. It is the sovereign grant, which comes from the profits of the Crown Estate, that pays for their official work. Over the next 2 years, that's actually going up from 86.3 million to 132 million. And amazingly, it's all down to the fact that wind farms are being built on Crown Estate land, and that is boosting profits. Now, the palace would argue that extra money is going to help to refurb places like Buckingham Palace and other heritage sites for the nation, but campaigners still aren't happy about it. Republic carrying out this stunt a couple of weeks ago.
The whole process of reporting the royal finances needs to be taken out of the hands of the royal household. It should be dealt with by the Treasury, and it should be reported by the government to Parliament, where it can be properly scrutinised. For example, the detail of their travel costs is not broken down. And in Parliament, people can ask serious questions about why they're spending so much money on themselves.
Prince William, meeting the Lionesses earlier, felt the heat of scrutiny last year about the Duchy of Cornwall, which funds the heir to the throne. Now they've announced that they won't be charging rent to certain charities who use their buildings. But again, they haven't revealed how much tax William pays on the £22.9 million that he receives from the Duchy, only saying he pays the highest rate. The finances are always billed as the royals being more transparent about how they get their money, but there'll always be those who say we deserve to know more. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News at Buckingham Palace.
Now, household energy prices are going to fall today for 21 million households in England, but those bills could still be set to rise in the future. Paul is here, our business and economics correspondent. Paul, so Ofgem's price cap out again today. Bills down, but that's not the full picture, is it?
The new price cap, which we got told about 8 weeks ago, probably now, a fall of 7%. So good news for bill payers, down to £1,720 for the average household as of today, although you won't have needed your heating in this weather. But there's announcements too today from Ofgem about what future bills might look like to fund the massive expansion of the electricity grid that's required to connect up all the new renewable power to deliver the clean power grid the government wants. Here's the price cap. We can just see that. For me, look at that big spike after the Ukraine war when bills above £4,000 if the government hadn't bailed us out. £40 billion that cost. Let's just have a look at what this new investment, the impact it's going to have on what makes up those bills. We can see there's a lot here to take in, but look at that blue chunk at the bottom. Wholesale gas prices make up the majority of our bills.
That's the stuff from the market, right?
That's exactly every day. When it's traded, and that price, that wholesale price, whatever the source, whether it's nuclear, wind or gas, is generally set by gas because it's the last bit of power you need to keep the lights on. And so but the network costs, the red bit there, 21% of the cost of the bill. Well, those costs are going to go up about £102 over the next 5 years for every bill payer to fund what ultimately will be £80 billion of investment in the grid. This is new pylons, this is new undersea cables, this is to connect the grid up so that it can cope with all this new power. At the moment, it's built to deal with a relatively few number of power stations, which were, at the beginning, were coal. So our bills are going to come up. And we spoke earlier today to Jonathan Brearley, the Chief Executive of Ofgem, about why they believe it's OK now to ask us to pay in advance, essentially, for something that hopefully will deliver savings in future.
This is ultimately an investment, and the investment comes from all customers, and that will add to our bills, but it will take us away from the situation that we've been in over the last few years. So 2 years ago, I was on this show talking about bills going to £3,600 potentially. We had government putting in £40 to £50 billion just to keep that down to £2,500 for the average household. Going back to 2020, that's almost double what we saw previously. We cannot go back to that. So this investment is needed. Let's get ourselves to a more stable place, and let's make sure British consumers have what they really need, which is a way of getting away from this volatility.
Isn't it, Paul? So the bill's going down 7% for only the next 3 months. And what happens beyond that, no one knows.
No, that's true. Although we've got a forecast. There's an advisory firm, Cornwall Insight, who use, I think their model is essentially quite similar to Ofgem's. They're saying that in October, the next cap will be a little bit more down because it's based on the energy companies buy as much of the energy they can in advance, and prices are flat at the moment. So it could be the point here is at some point in future, because gas not only underpins the grid, it sets the price. We need to get off that. In France, for example, nuclear sets the price, which is cheaper. So we need to get enough renewables on the system that the balance shifts. But what nobody can tell me, and believe me, we ask, is when that tipping point.
Question.
When that tipping point comes, the idea is you load up. This is a huge amount of new capacity being put onto the grid from renewables, but it needs to be, because you can't store renewables sufficiently at the moment. You need the gas, which can be switched on at a stroke. So there is a point at which, and the government says it'll be around, by 2030, that tips, and we do start to see lower prices. Whether they'll be actually lower or just stable remains to be seen. But that is the plan here. It's extremely ambitious, but we are all going to have to pay for it up front.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, right, Paul? Thank you for that. All right, well, still to come on The Breakfast Show, Jackie is in that queue at Wimbledon. Jackie, how's it looking?
Well, you know what? Day one was so good. We're going to do it all again in very similar fashion, hopefully. 7 Brits through yesterday, the hottest first day of Wimbledon ever at 33 degrees. I think it's going to be about 31 today. All of these queuers taking all the precautions because it's very exposed at Wimbledon. Thousands of them here, hoping to get in and see another good day's play.
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now. It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon. Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes. Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then.
There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits coming in still.
We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, a boat seriously overcrowded.
This is one of the most severe viruses in the world.
Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa!
Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime. They don't care for that. Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Hello there and welcome back. Let's go straight down to SW19 where Jackie is hanging out in the queue with people trying to get in to Wimbledon on day 2 after there was an excellent day 1 for the British talent down there.
We're going to touch base with Jackie shortly, but it's interesting, isn't it, because fans queuing up, in some cases, overnight to get that first snap at tickets to get in, and once they're in, it's a wonderful sight, Wimbledon.
Have you been in?
I've covered it many years previously, and back then, when I was covering Wimbledon, it was Murray Mount, so there's a hill within the site where you can take
Headman Hill, didn't it?
Yeah, Headman Hill before then, but you'd grab your strawberries and cream, you'd sit on there and watch centre court, and it's amazing. And when I was there, it was the tennis match that lasted 72 hours, long into the night. But yes, Murray Mount, Headman Hill, and I'm wondering whether it's Raducanu Range now. Who knows? So when we touch base with Jackie, we'll clear up a few things. But it did open, didn't it, Wimbledon, on the hottest day of the year last year, with you know, temperatures hitting 33 degrees yesterday. Our meteorologist, Joe Robinson, is here. So what was the temperature yesterday on the opening day? Was it 32, 33?
33, yes.
33 degrees.
So, yes, we have beaten the record. The record before was 29.3 the opening day. Some will say that they have changed the starting dates by about a week, about 10 years ago, I think. They've moved it
forward.
Okay. So there is that. But yes, either way, a hot start to the tournament. And I think the record for Wimbledon is 35.7.
Okay.
I think that's the record. So probably not going to see that today, but we'll get close to it.
Because the weather's about to change, isn't it, for the next few days? And always the fear at Wimbledon. They've got covers on the main show course now, I think, all 3 of them now. But the rain stopping play and that being a problem. So maybe by the middle Monday?
Maybe. There will be some rain in the forecast. I mean, it's always driest in the southeast. High pressure's always trying to cling on in the southeast. I forget, does Wimbledon play this weekend? I don't think it...
They'll go through, they'll have a rest day on Sunday. I think there's a rest on Sunday and then they play again.
So there is a little bit of rain in the forecast for the southeast over the weekend. Maybe a little bit of rain tomorrow before games start that might affect things.
So, Joe, look, just give us a picture across the country, because the heat wave is mainly concentrated down south. But across the country, conditions are varying, aren't they? So what's been happening?
Yeah, no. Well, we've had, I mean, yesterday we had temperatures into the low 30s, even into northern England. So it's quite widespread temperatures into the low 30s across England yesterday. The main heat today is focused across the southeast.
OK.
That's where we'll see perhaps slightly higher temperatures than yesterday. We could see small chance of reaching 35 degrees Celsius. But we're now into July, so that's not quite a record. The record for July is 40.3 degrees. We were talking about it earlier, that we saw a few years ago, back in 2022. So not record-breaking, but still very hot in the southeast. But yes, cooler conditions elsewhere, cooler than what we had yesterday, certainly for sort of northern parts of England and Wales.
Thank you for that, Joe. Well, we can now join Jackie at SW19 in Wimbledon. And Jackie, look, hot day yesterday, going to be a hot day again today, but as Joe was saying, it's a bit of rain forecast perhaps for the weekend.
Well, don't jinx it. Just when the tennis was going so well, yeah, really hot day here yesterday. The hottest first day of Wimbledon on record at 32 degrees, expecting 31 here. And thousands of fans at the Wimbledon queue. These guys will just be hoping for ground passes, and they will be very exposed to the weather today. They've got iced water, sun cream, loads of umbrellas, which is, you kind of associate that with Wimbledon, but not generally speaking. For the sun. 7 players through yesterday. It was an incredibly good day. Emma Raducanu was through, Katie Bolter, Sonny Cartel put out the 20th seed. Arthur Ferry from Wimbledon, 461 in the world, put out the 20th seed in the men's. And Ollie Tarvett, who's a story we have been following, the student who goes to American University, who can't keep his £99,000 prize money apart from $10,000 worth of expenses. Well, he won a Wimbledon match. He is through to the second round. It's the stuff that dreams are made of. And he has now just got to keep his feet on the ground for tomorrow and not think too much about the big show court he's going to be playing on.
As much as it's going to be really cool, hopefully playing on a show court, you know, again, it's just
trying not to let the moment get too big and, not make it out to be more than it is. Obviously, it's, a really, really cool experience and a great opportunity for me. But again, just trying to focus on what's important to me, and that's just the process and in making sure that I'm playing my brand of tennis. Obviously, Alcaraz or Fini is going to make my life difficult, but, it's something that you prepare for and you expect. And, yeah, just, as I said, just going to enjoy the moment out there. And it's not every day that you get to play on a show court Wimbledon, so just had a lot of fun.
Last year, I think because of the weather, if you just flick down there, Martin, all of those tents down there are queuing for tomorrow, not today. These guys here are queuing for tomorrow, not today. Guys, can I ask you what time you joined the queue and who are you hoping to see tomorrow?
So we joined about 6:45 in the morning. We hope we're going to see Alcaraz. Fingers crossed.
So Alcaraz against Ollie Tarvit. I mean, you're a tennis player, you were telling me earlier. How well has he done to come through qualifying as a student?
He's done really well. I think he's performed incredibly well. Yeah, no, I think he's going to enjoy his match against Alcaraz. Yeah, I think he's going to do well.
What's so lovely about Alcaraz? Actually, everybody in this queue seems to want to watch him.
Yeah, he's his style of play, his enthusiasm, and he's just a really nice guy.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's what it is. He's a really nice guy. Yesterday there was a lady who fainted in the crowd on his court. He spotted it, took one of his water bottles out and made sure it was given to her. So Alcaraz at Tarvit tomorrow, but plenty in action today, including Jack Draper, the British #1, world #4.
Enjoy the sport, enjoy that queue as well if you can. It's like a nice way to start.
Yeah, what's interesting is those heat protocols at Wimbledon wasn't actually triggered yesterday. So we'll have to see if that happens today, because Joe is telling us it could be 33 today,
Yeah,
potentially.
Well, there's plenty more to come, of course, in the next hour of the programme here on Breakfast, as we'll continue to look ahead to that pivotal vote for the government in the Commons later on today. Stay with us.
We're rolling. Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Hello and good morning. It is 9 a.m. and on today's show, the Prime Minister struggles to win over rebel MPs ahead of today's crucial vote on benefit cuts.
Is Keir Starmer confident he'll win? We've heard from the government and the opposition this morning.
Plus, it's day 2 of Wimbledon, with all eyes on British player Jack Draper as he takes on Sebastian Baez.
It is Tuesday, the 1st of July. Keir Starmer faces the biggest revolt of his premiership over welfare, with Labour rebels accusing the government of breaking promises. The UK's largest ever knife surrender scheme launched today. We've got a special report on the reality of knife crime. Europe bakes under a heat dome with temperatures of more than 40 degrees, and here in the UK, you can expect another scorcher.
We are at London Zoo to check out how the animals are keeping cool.
We are live in the Wimbledon queue. Thousands have been queuing since the early hours to get into Wimbledon. It's going to be a real hot one again. 31 degrees expected. 7 Brits through yesterday. Can more make it through today?
Hello there and good morning. The Prime Minister is in a last-ditch battle to persuade his MPs to back his welfare reforms. Speaking to Sky News this morning, Jonathan Reynolds, the Business and Trade Secretary, told us it's not true to say that people will be pushed into poverty by the changes, but some leading backbench rebels say the concessions just don't go far enough. We'll speak to Serena about all of this in just a moment, but first, let's get a little bit of a flavour of the debate. I'll accept that point, but those who are against this bill say that you're rushing it through still, because you say that Stephen Timms' review is going to have buy-in from disabled charity groups, campaigners, etc., and yet we don't know what he's going to find. And you've decided on this, and you're going to make your MPs vote today at second reading.
There are lots of parts of this which everybody supports. So there's a big increase in spending on support for people to get them back to work. There are changes, as I say, so protecting people with severe conditions who won't have to be reassessed. I think that is really important. The right to try to give people a chance to get back to work. There's a lot in this, but most of all, there's an urgency for reform, right? If people think governments will dodge difficult issues, spend a lot of money, even on outcomes they don't think are very good and the public don't support, and if that chance to reform a system is seen to have been lost entirely, that undermines public support for it. And honestly, that is, I want the most vulnerable people protected in this country, and I worry if we aren't willing to look at how it's working at the minute, we'll lose that.
You're making the argument about urgency, but those rebels will say, and not just the rebels, I mean, Andy Burnham, Sadiq Khan, say that you should just take some time, pause it. You've seen the outrage. I mean, 126 of your MPs put their name to that reasoned amendment last week. There's still plenty of disquiet. We don't know what the number will be today. Why not just take a pause over the summer, reflect, get the Timms review in place, and then come back then?
I think we have to show that we're willing to tackle difficult issues, that we're willing to reform a system. Lots of the proposals have a lot of support, and I think we should proceed with those, start to make a change, start to make a difference. I fear if we just were to say, oh, bit difficult this, let's pull away, the idea that we're willing to look at how money is
other
spent.
Stuff before.
Well, look, I think
you could do, couldn't you?
The process on this, talking to colleagues, listening to them, that has improved the set of proposals. There's no doubt about that. And as a parliamentarian, I think that is the right way to proceed. But again, you talk to anyone who is perhaps signing that amendment, I'm aware of no one who is saying, this is a great system, it works really well at the minute.
We are going to vote against this legislation. We offered Keir Starmer some guidance on what he could do to get our support and how he needed to fix what he's put before Parliament, but he didn't take us up on our suggestions, and instead he's capitulated to his rebels. And what we're seeing here was it was already rushed, it was already ambitious, and as a result of the government's U-turn, it's saving even less. But actually, this is about more than welfare, because the government's economic credibility is at stake.
I'd rather the government pulled the bill and we didn't have to be in this position. I think MPs from right across the party are furious about being forced to choose between loyalty to our party and loyalty to our constituents, because we'd hoped that those two things would never conflict, especially when it comes to, the fundamentals, the basics. But if our party is being steered down the wrong path, and if it won't listen, then many of us will side with our constituents and with Labour values.
Well, Serena is here for more on this. Serena, look, it's going to be a very interesting moment when that vote is actually read and we get the numbers.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster from huge rebellion. Keir Starmer saying he took his eye off the ball, that he didn't actually think about this rebellion until Thursday last week, to thinking that Downing Street had called this rebellion off, to yesterday now MPs publicly sort of showing their discontent again. I think the main issue is over the changes to personal independence payments and universal credit. While that will remain the same for existing claimants, it's about this new cohort that now they will be applying, where the rules have slightly changed, so it will be less money that they will get, essentially, for both of those things. I think also the main issue that MPs have told me they have with the bill, essentially, is that they think it's been moved too quickly without enough scrutiny. Now, what the government have been doing in order to challenge that is to give them more information. So there was an impact assessment yesterday. You had Liz Kendall in the Commons talking about the reasons why they want to change and reform welfare. But that seems to have thrown up more questions than answers. You had Nadia speaking to you earlier saying that, you know, the impact assessment said 150,000 working people will be pushed into relative poverty, and they haven't given the figures on how many people it would bring back into work. So I think the problem with trying to get all of these MPs on side is the more information you give them, correctly, they are asking legitimate questions back, which the government don't really have answers to yet, as well as what you put to the minister there about this existing PIP review not yet being finished and there not being a date to finalise it. So there'll be lots of questions today, lots of conversations in back doors in Parliament, lots of phone calls with MPs, potentially involving Keir Starmer, but essentially we won't know whether it will pass until 7 o'clock tonight.
We'll find out then. Just in time for politics over Sophie.
Love it.
Yeah,
it's almost like we planned this.
Right?
Great stuff. We're going to move on now. Thanks, Serena, so much. Because the UK's largest ever knife surrender scheme is being launched today. And Sky's Tom Parminter has been to a hospital in Manchester and spoken to one victim of knife crime and the frontline teams who worked to save him.
I've never in my life been stabbed, so I don't know how it's meant to even feel. So initially, the pain came when I realised the blood's just spitting out the side of my ribcage, and that's when I start panicking. All I could hear was everybody screaming around me, about 10 voices, you know. I just felt like as though I was slowly slipping away. My lungs felt like they were filled with blood, where I couldn't breathe. I thought that each breath that I take, I'm gonna drown in my own blood.
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
I'd say even for the perpetrators, it is not worth it, man. Because once you decide to carry a knife, trust me, it ends two ways. Either you stab someone or you get stabbed.
You should have the right to feel safe and protected wherever you are. So don't blame yourself for what happened. We are going to be there to help you.
Favour is here to offer support beyond the physical injuries. She's not here to judge. The police are investigating what's happened.
Favour has shown me that you don't have to be alone in a situation like this.
And you can watch the full version of Tom Parminter's report. It's online for you and the Sky News app, so do take a look. Now, it's going to be another scorcher, isn't it, today? And we're going to talk to our meteorologist, Joe Robinson, about all of this in a bit. But it's also hotting up across the country. We'll be going to Jackie, who's at Wimbledon, and also Sadia, who's at London Zoo today, just to get a sense of how people are coping and animals coping too. But let's go first to Sadia down at London Zoo. We've spent the morning with you, Sadia, checking in with the penguins. But now you're at another location, and I'm sensing you're at the Reptile Centre. Is that right?
So we are about to go into the reptiles and amphibians, that's right. But just outside, I just want to give you a sense of what it's like out here. The temperature is 26. So we're going to move inside and show you a bit about how the reptiles and amphibians are kept here. They're in dark tanks because they're trying to mimic their natural habitats. But everything is super controlled here. And let's start with this heat map. So I'll just show you this heat map on the wall, which is checking the temperature all the time. And the brighter you appear, the hotter you are. So there you go, I'm fairly hot there. And if we walk around, you can see behind me the tanks. It does get a bit dark in here, as I say, and that is because of the natural environment that the zoo is trying to mimic here. And we can come over now and talk to Sam, who is the zookeeper here. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. We are next to the alligators tanks.
Philippine croc, yes.
Tell us a bit about the alligator here.
So our Philippine crocodile here is maintained in one of our glorious enclosures that we have here at London Zoo. This building was built 2024, and we have the real great privilege to be able to control all of the temperatures, lighting, everything else in these spaces for the animals, so we can actually maintain their seasonal temperatures throughout the year of their natural environment. So even when it's sort of -degrees outside, or when it's really hot like it is now, we can maintain these at the correct temperatures for those animals, for the environments they come from.
Amazing. A lot of technology going in. We can't actually see the Philippine croc. I've got it right this time.
Currently sat in the denning area.
Yeah.
Just poking the nose out.
Exactly, just poking a little bit of nose. But it's all very controlled here, you said, and that is with all of the different species in here, because there are so many. Tell us a bit about the enclosure in itself.
There are. So we've got a variety of different species in here, obviously amphibians and reptiles, some of them coming from much more temperate regions. So you've got water temperatures at around about 13 or 14 degrees at the moment. Others, like our Philippine croc, where we're looking at around about 24 to 26 degrees for water temperature, a little bit more on land. And then we also have basking zones and UV zones, so they can come out onto land and get some really high temperatures and hit anything up to 34 to 40 degrees and really warm themselves up and bask properly as they would do in the natural environment.
Great. Sam, thank you so much for your time. It is quite dark in here. It is mimicking the wild, and that's why it's so dark. But everything here, very, very controlled, especially the temperature.
Well, I tell you where it is controlled. Sadia, thank you. It's all controlled and cool at SW19. Let's go over to Wimbledon and Jackie. How's it going, Jackie? Because people have been queuing, haven't they, from very early this morning and a chance to get tickets for tomorrow.
Yeah, people have been queuing since last night for the chance to queue to get tickets for tomorrow. That is true. That's quite normal here. The queue, I would say, is a lot bigger than last year because of the weather. People can come down and know it's not going to be miserable. Actually, it's going to be quite fun. There's thousands queuing behind me. These will all be getting ground passes. They've already missed the big tickets. And it's very exposed when you get into Wimbledon. You know, there's not many places for shade, particularly if you're watching a match. And yesterday on centre court, and even on centre court, there's not much shade. There was a very long match on there. Carlos Alcaraz, the defending champion, played like 4.5 hours or so, 5 sets against Fabio Fognini. Really long match, really, really hot, 32 degrees, record temperatures yesterday. A lady in the crowd fainted. He spotted it, ran over to his water cooler and got one of the ball kids to take that water into the crowd. So obviously a very nice guy, but very mindful as well that, you know, the temperatures for the fans. If you're watching a long match, you've got to be careful because you can be sitting in the sun for a long, long time. I'm joined by some fans here who are going to be sitting in the sun for a long, long time. Guys, it's going to be another hot one today. What preparations have you made?
I've got my fan, a couple umbrellas, some ice packs and a cool bag in my bag.
The ice packs are a great idea.
Yeah, I had to run to John Lewis yesterday because they were the only place that had them in stock. So, yeah.
Other shops are available with ice packs, but you just didn't find them. What about you guys? I mean, they say one of the advisories is don't drink alcohol, but I mean, everyone goes to Wimbledon to drink champagne, eat strawberries, and drink Pimm's. How are you going to manage that?
Yeah, not much else to do in the queue, to be honest. Like, it gets about 9 o'clock, the sun's out. It's like the conversation gets dry quite quickly.
But I mean, looking forward to seeing anyone in particular today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jack Draper, Dimitrov. If we can get on that course, obviously we've only got ground pass, and then go on the hill as well. Just see the best matches.
Yeah, well, the hill's a bit nice this year. But thank you, guys. Have a lovely day today. Try and keep cool. But you know what? The thing about the hill is Henman Hill is it is very exposed. You know, we saw a lot of people on the hill yesterday with umbrellas, not the usual sort of umbrella for Wimbledon, but using it for shade because there's nowhere to hide really when you're sitting on that hill. But it is a lovely place for a picnic, particularly on days like today.
All right, Jackie, thank you. Looks lovely down there at Wimbledon, doesn't it? We're joined by Joe Robinson, our meteorologist. So how hot did it get yesterday, Joe?
So it was 33.1 degrees yesterday. Not quite the highest temperature of the year so far. That's still back on the 21st of June when we got to 33.2 degrees Celsius. But we could get higher today. We could see 34 degrees Celsius, maybe small risk of a 35 somewhere. And I think it's a zone from sort of Exeter across to Norwich, southeast of that line. We could see higher temperatures today compared to yesterday, then further north and west, slightly lower temperatures than yesterday, because yesterday we saw widespread temperatures into the low 30s across, even into northern England.
Jo, we're seeing pictures here across Europe because it's even hotter.
It really is. Yeah, the heat has been building there. We've seen June records broken in Portugal and Spain, and the heat's been building in France, and today in Paris could get to 40 degrees Celsius. There is a red weather warning in place for areas around Paris, other parts of France as well. So severe conditions, very high temperatures, and the heat is continuing. That high pressure that is causing the heat, we're going to see that drifting further eastwards across Europe, so it will bring some high temperatures further east across Europe in the coming days as well.
All right, Jo, nice one. Thanks so much for bringing us up to date on the latest weather-wise. Really appreciate it. Let's take a look at some of the day's other stories now. And US President Donald Trump has suggested DOGE, that's the Department of Government Efficiency, should investigate its former boss, Elon Musk. He wrote this on the Truth Social. Elon may get more subsidies, sorry, I've got that wrong all day, subsidies, than any human in history, by far, without subsidiaries. Elon will probably get close to close up shop, head back home to South Africa. Perhaps this is the president saying we should have DOGE take a good hard look at this. Big money to be saved. More than 140 people are killed or seriously injured in tailgating incidents in England each year. New research has revealed at least 1 in 8 collisions involves a driver failing to leave the proper space between themselves and the vehicle in front. Drivers caught tailgating in England could face a £100 fine and then 3 penalty points. Now, from Sunday, smoking will be banned on beaches and in public parks across France under new legislation. This is aimed at shielding children from the dangers of passive smoking. The ban is, in part, a broader anti-smoking strategy, which also includes tighter regulations on cigarette sales and expanding no smoking zones in public spaces. Now, household energy prices will fall today for 21 million households in England, but those bills could set to rise in the future. Let's get across this then with our business and economics correspondent, Paul Kelso. What's the headline takeaway? Better, lower bills for now, at least?
Lower bills today, which we already knew about. The price cap has come down about 7%, and that kicks in as of today. People will note the hottest time of year, your heating bills got cheaper. They'll want that to last into the winter when you actually use it. But an announcement today from Ofgem, the regulator, that they've approved about £20 billion of investment we'll talk about in a minute. This is the energy price cap. You can see there that spike after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The government was bailing out and paying our energy bills. It's just come down a bit to £1,700. That's average use for an average household. Actually forecast to come down a little bit more, under £1,700 in October. But that price is largely set at the moment by wholesale gas prices. What the regulators announced today is a big expansion of the electricity grid to bring more renewables on to try and change this breakdown. Look at this. This is the breakdown of your bill. Look at the big blue bit at the bottom. 43% is wholesale gas prices. That really sets the price for us. And when it was in short supply, thanks to Vladimir Putin, prices went up. The network cost is the bit I want to talk about. The red bit there, more than 20% of our bills. That's the cost of maintaining and expanding the grid. Now, this massive expansion of the grid to bring renewables online, £24 billion approved by the regulator today, is going to push up those network costs by, the regulator says, £102 over the next 5 years. So that will go onto our bills. So it might be coming down today, but the long-term view is they will go up to pay to get clean power on the grid. So some will characterise this as a cost of net zero. The government and the regulator and many in this industry say it's absolutely necessary to shift away from the reliance on gas so that gas doesn't set the price. We have enough renewables on the grid that they set the price of power. To do that, we need to connect them to the grid. And at the moment, the grid, which was built for a relatively small number of power stations, coal to start with, has to bring in cables from offshore sources and get the power, which is much of it is in offshore, the north of Scotland, to where we are, most of the users, in the south of Scotland and south of there. So that's what these costs will pay for. We spoke to Jonathan Brearley, the chief executive of Ofgem earlier. He explained why he believes in time it should deliver lower bills.
This is ultimately an investment, and the investment comes from all customers, and that will add to our bills, but it will take us away from the situation that we've been in over the last few years. So 2 years ago, I was on this show talking about bills going to £3,600 potentially. We had government putting in £40 to £50 billion just to keep that down to £2,500 for the average household. Going back to 2020, that's almost double what we saw previously. We cannot go back to that. So this investment is needed. Let's get ourselves to a more stable place, and let's make sure British consumers have what they really need, which is a way of getting away from this volatility.
Yeah, and then ultimately, all of this reform, all of this change, it goes back on the customer.
It does ultimately. Someone's got to pay for it, and it's going to be customers. Fair enough, you would say. We're the ones who are using the power. All this investment, which is around 25 billion today, and that's gas network as well, it'll rise to £80 billion to fully expand the grid. It should be said it's been made by private companies. Our grid operators, National Grid in England and two in Scotland, they're privately owned. They'll be making a return on their equity of 6%. They'll be drawing dividends. They'll be paying their investors a return. Fair enough, they will say. But we've seen with water, haven't we, how that can shift if the service isn't provided. So there will be an expectation from consumers that bills, at the very least, don't continue to rise in the same way. We're still 40% higher than we were before the Ukraine war.
All right, Paul, thank you, as always. Right then, let's take a look at today's weather.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, we came close to the highest temperature of the year so far yesterday, but it looks a bit cooler today. It's mainly dry at first, but extensive cloud stretching from the Irish Sea into eastern Scotland will bring a little patchy rain. Now, the south will be muggy again. Central Britain, eastern Scotland and the east of Ireland will stay quite cloudy this morning with a few showery outbreaks possible, mainly in the north. Now, most other places will be dry and sunny. It'll be cooler, still hot and humid in the southeast.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. Qatar Airways sponsors the weather.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show. After 123 years, it's the end of the line for the Royal Train. We'll have more on that next.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, central Britain and eastern Scotland will be quite cloudy this morning with some showery outbreaks possible, mainly for the north. Most other places, dry and sunny. It's going to be cooler generally, still hot and humid though in the southeast. The east of Scotland and northern England will see showers later with a chance of thunder. The southeast could catch the odd thunderstorm too, but it'll be mainly dry elsewhere. Pollen levels will be very high in the south, again falling to high to moderate and then low further north you go.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, welcome back. It was the late Queen's favourite mode of transport, but the palace confirmed the royal train is to be scrapped in favour of 2 new helicopters.
Yeah, that's as the royal family applies what it calls fiscal discipline to deliver value for money. Here's our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills.
It was once Queen Elizabeth's favourite way to travel. Now the royal train has reached the end of the line. Used only twice last year, the decision has been made to take it out of action. The bill to bring it up to date seemed to be too much, meaning that in a couple of years it's destined to potentially become a museum piece. It's the cost of other travel that is likely to raise eyebrows. Remember this trip to Australia and then on to Samoa last year? Flights for the King and Queen and their staff cost over £400,000. Just part of a £4.7 million travel bill the royal family racked up travelling abroad and across the UK. It is the sovereign grant, which comes from the profits of the Crown Estate, that pays for their official work. Over the next 2 years, that's actually going up from 86.3 million to 132 million. And amazingly, it's all down to the fact that wind farms are being built on Crown Estate land, and that is boosting profits. Now, the palace would argue that extra money is going to help to refurb places like Buckingham Palace and other heritage sites for the nation, but campaigners still aren't happy about it. Republic carrying out this stunt a couple of weeks ago.
The whole process of reporting the royal finances needs to be taken out of the hands of the royal household. It should be dealt with by the Treasury, and it should be reported by the government to Parliament, where it can be properly scrutinised. For example, the detail of their travel costs is not broken down. And in Parliament, people can ask serious questions about why they're spending so much money on themselves.
Prince William, meeting the Lionesses earlier, felt the heat of scrutiny last year about the Duchy of Cornwall, which funds the heir to the throne. Now they've announced that they won't be charging rent to certain charities who use their buildings. But again, they haven't revealed how much tax William pays on the £22.9 million that he receives from the Duchy, only saying he pays the highest rate. The finances are always billed as the royals being more transparent about how they get their money, but there'll always be those who say we deserve to know more. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News at Buckingham Palace.
All right, we'll still to come on The Breakfast Show this morning. I'm going to be speaking to the Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Sharon Haskell about the war in Gaza and that controversy from Glastonbury at the weekend.
Turkey is burying its dead. Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Hello there and welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up shortly, we're going to speak to Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister Sharon Haskell. But first, Leah's got our top stories.
Thanks, Kamali. Yeah, so Keir Starmer faces an anxious wait to see if MPs will approve his welfare reforms today, with the outcome looking less than clear despite recent concessions. The plans have been met with opposition, including from rebels in the Prime Minister's own party, with some calling for the reforms to be scrapped entirely. Elsewhere, the government's launching what it calls the biggest ever knife amnesty today, with bins being placed in 3 major areas. 37 places to surrender weapons will be installed across London, Manchester and the West Midlands until the end of the month. Another hot day is in store for some parts of England as the ongoing heat wave looks set to bring more sweltering temperatures today. Now, yesterday was already the hottest opening day of Wimbledon ever, and there'll be no let up today with temperatures set to reach the mid-30s. And Ofgem's price cap has fallen for the first time in a year as energy bills decrease by 7%. The price cap, which sets a maximum rate per unit, will fall by £129 for an average household. This is per year over the next 3 months.
Thanks for that, Leah. Now, more than 70 people were killed yesterday by Israeli fire in Gaza, many of them at a beachfront cafe. Well, that cafe was popular with journalists and students because it offered reliable internet access, and it was crowded when it was hit in an Israeli airstrike. Well, here in the UK, the BBC is facing more questions over why chants of death to the IDF at Glastonbury were streamed live. Pleased to say we're now joined by Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister, Sharon Haskell. Deputy Foreign Minister, thanks very much for being with us this morning. We do appreciate you taking the time. So the police are investigating what happened at Glastonbury. As you will know, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, said at the weekend that he was appalled by what he saw at the festival. But he also said that the Israeli embassy needs to get its own house in order, citing what's happening in Gaza and in the West Bank. What did you make of those comments?
Well, I have to say, obviously, it's disappointing that every time something outrageous like those anti-Semitic calls, death calls, violent calls, needs to be somehow balanced politically. Because, and I understand, I'm a politician as well, the voters, and to please the voters, and many politicians are worried about their seats, but I don't think it's just disappointing to us. I think the first thing they should think about, is what's right. And in that case, in such a case of anti-Semitism, a violent call of death, genocidal calls, I think it should have been far more obvious.
Minister, he did roundly condemn it, as many people here on all sides of the political spectrum have. Let's just play the clip from Mr. Streeting at the weekend and we'll talk again off the back.
I'd also say to the Israeli embassy, get your own house in order in terms of the conduct of your own citizens and the settlers in the West Bank. I think there's a serious point there by the Israeli embassy I take seriously. I wish they'd take the violence of their own citizens towards Palestinians more seriously.
So continuing to condemn there, but also talking about settler violence, what's your response to that?
Well, as I said, it's very sad. I think that if politician thinks that they need to somehow, when they're calling racism outright, to somehow balance it, to please a political crowd or some of their voters, I think it's sad. It's disappointing.
I mean, Ms. Haskell, he may well believe what he's saying. It may not be a politically expedient. He may well think that while it was abhorrent what happened at Glastonbury, there also needs to be more focus on what's happening in both Gaza and the West Bank. He also specifically referred to Israeli settler terrorists. Those are the words that he used. The UN's humanitarian office say that 850 Palestinians and 40 Israelis have died in the occupied West Bank since the Hamas attacks from the 7th of October, 3 in Kafir Malik just last week. Does Israel have a settler terrorist problem?
Look, first thing, I think that with such calls, anti-Semitic calls, and somehow it's been normalized in British society, I think the last thing, should be done is to somehow making any kind of comparisons or any kind of something that might imply for justification for violent calls or racist calls at a festival. That's the first thing. If you want to talk to me about the actual case of what is happening, we've condemned it, the government, almost everybody have condemned it. This is something that shouldn't happen, but that happens on the margins and the extreme, okay? This is a very, very rare case of what had happened, and Israel, as a Western democracy with an independent judicial system, a very robust judicial system. If someone broke the law, they were arrested, people will be persecuted, and they will have to pay for a crime they committed. Any crime. And it doesn't matter whether they're Muslims or Jewish or Christian or Bedouins. Israel is ruled by the rule of law. And as you've seen, the Israeli judicial system is a very, very strong one and very independent one, and we take it very seriously. To try and take such an extreme, unique case that is extremely rare and somehow put it in another sentence that might sound like it's justifying a cause in England, that are anti-Semitic calls, genocidal calls, outrageous death calls. I think it's not just unjust, but it's shameful.
Ms. Haskell, as you say, it has been condemned by the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu condemned by the President as well. What happened, Yair Lapid also said that the most serious threat to Israel doesn't come from Iran or Yemen, but from within us. You've said that there will be action taken on this. Just what will that look like? Will there be more arrests made? It's reported that the individuals involved in the killings in Kafr Malik were arrested and released.
Well, first of all, as I said, Israel has the rule of law, and everybody are equal in front of the law in Israel, no matter what religion you're in or what race you're from. It doesn't matter. You will be judged by the judicial system exactly the same as anyone else.
I'm sure Palestinians would disagree with that characterization, though, of the way the law works.
Well, you might disagree with that, but the fact is, that's the reality in Israel. The fact is that Israel has one of the most robust judicial systems in the world, where it wasn't afraid of an Arab Supreme Court judge in the Israeli court to judge a former president of the state of Israel. So that's the proof of how strong and independent is our judicial system. So I understand the propaganda that you might receive from some extreme organizations, but the reality is different. You just need to open your eyes and look at the facts. Now,
Ms. Haskell, he's an elected government minister. That was the point that he made. It's not propaganda coming from Westminster.
Look, that case of violence was so extreme, okay? It was so extreme, and that's why you're reporting it. This is not something that happens every day. We condemn it. We will prosecute this. If there was any offense, and it looks like there was, I will let the judicial system deal with it like it have dealt with it before many times in many different cases.
OK, let's move on to the situation in Gaza. As we've been reporting in the past 24 hours, 70 people reported to have been killed in strikes, many of them at that beachside cafe. What steps have been taken to avoid innocent people being killed in the ongoing war?
So the first thing, I'll be very careful in reporting unverified reports. These reports come straight from the mouth of a terrorist organization, Hamas, from Hamas's Ministry of Health. Now, in the cases of the last 3 weeks, many events like that were proven to be Hamas's propaganda.
Which events in particular? Sorry, Ms. Haskell. Which events in particular are proven to be propaganda?
There were many events. I was actually...
Can you name one?
I was interviewed with you just, I think it was 4 weeks ago, when you put me online about a certain accusation about an event inside a humanitarian zone or in the humanitarian distribution centers. I was literally 3 minutes after you put the headline there, and about 3 hours later, it was reported that that was absolutely fake. So that happens, okay? Now, and you've apologized for it as well. It happens, I understand. Sometimes you take the headlines from Hamas's Ministry of Health, which is a terrorist organization. In this particular case, the IDF is investigating in. because it's not verified yet. It's very difficult to share some information, but you know what? I have some information who hasn't come out yet, and I can tell you that it looks like this strike was actually targeting a commander of the naval force of Hamas with 8 of his terrorists. Now, we are still looking into the details because the media is spreading a lot of misinformation also about damage, the amounts of civilians and anything like that. So we need to verify that in depth. And once it's verified, I'll be briefed about it and I can share that information with you more accurately.
Ms. Haskell, you know, we really appreciate that. You're referring to a conversation that I had with my colleague Trevor about a month ago about an attack in Rafah at a food distribution centre where at least 50 people were said to have been killed, hundreds injured, who went to then a Red Cross hospital. And specifically on these food distribution centres...
You've apologised for it because what you've reported wasn't accurate.
OK. Specifically on these distribution centres, there's been reporting in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz that says IDF soldiers were told to shoot at people waiting for food at these sites. Why was that order being given by commanders to soldiers?
Well, first of all, I'll be careful with things that Haaretz is actually writing about. This is a very extreme left-wing newspaper who in
Haaretz is an extreme left-wing newspaper.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It is a extreme left-wing newspaper, and in many times they've apologized for quite a few reports that they actually put in. We don't know of any case of it, but because they've reported it, we started investigating into it. But, you know, many of these blood libels that are being spread about the IDF are rubbish. The Prime Minister said and declared that also afterwards. And just to be on the safe side, we are going through our entire staffs, okay, in Gaza to make sure if there's any case of such reporting or such command, which
Ms. Haskell, you will acknowledge, though, that people have been killed since the Guardian Humanitarian Foundation began those food distribution sites, those 4 sites. People have been killed while waiting for food, haven't they?
Look. You need to understand, we are at war. Gaza Strip is a front line, a military front line with dozens, if not hundreds of operations against terrorists and a terrorist organization that is hiding behind humans. Just last week, they put a bounty on the heads of any worker of the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, meaning their life is in danger at any second when they are distributing food. They have targeted a whole bus of workers of the Humanitarian Fund and killed 5 workers. You need to understand that those conditions in a war are extreme. We are fighting
Ms. Haskell, but I'm sure you would...
Which is goal is to have as much destruction as possible, so there's going to be pressure on Israel.
But I'm sure you would agree that that does not in any way justify the killing of civilians. 17,000 children have died in Gaza since the Hamas attacks of October the 7th and the Israeli response. Now, just on the shootings at distribution sites, and
let's talk first about the number that you said, which is exaggerated, and we know from research.
How many children have been killed?
That was published not by Israel,
how many
but
children
a
have been killed?
How that these numbers are inflatable.
Do you have a number as to how many children have been killed?
Look, there isn't a war that is clean. There isn't a war where children were not killed. Unfortunately, a war is a thing. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing that we never wanted. In fact, we did everything in our capability to not have it. We provided almost 17 times the opportunity for Hamas to go into a ceasefire, and they refused. Just in the last 3 months, there were 2 proposals on the tables that Israel said yes, and Hamas refuses to that ceasefire. 2 weeks ago, Witkoff went a few more steps towards the demands of Hamas. Israel said yes to a ceasefire. Hamas hasn't replied yet. This war is on the responsibility of Hamas. This is a death cult that is using and shields. They are hiding rockets and tunnels and military headquarters in hospitals and schools, and it is very difficult to conduct a war against such a terrorist organization. Is Israel targeting civilians on purpose? Absolutely not. There is not a chance in the world that Israel is purposely targeting civilians. Is there casualties? Yes. And is there mistakes? In a war, there's unfortunately mistakes.
What will happen when this war is over? Sorry, when this war is over, what will happen to those that have been found to have been responsible for the, as you say, unfortunate civilian deaths?
Well, first of all, I'll repeat it because I don't think you got it. Israel doesn't target civilian. When you hear Iran, blasting in its speeches that it targets civilian on purpose, the biggest the destruction, the more civilian die. Iran, it's strategy. Israel's different. We do not target civilian. We target terrorists. We target a death cult that is committed to the obliteration of our people and the genocide of our people.
Lots of civilians have been killed as a result of the response.
Well, unfortunately, civilians were killed unintentionally when we were trying to fight that death cult that is using them as human.
Let's move on to my final question then.
And you need to understand that.
Minister, I do understand that. But let's move on to my final question then, because I can assure you I do understand how difficult it must be to fight a war like this. But what the point I'm making is that too many civilians, as been reported, have now died as a result. Now,
but whose responsibility is that? Would Hamas take a ceasefire? Would those civilians?
I want to ask you about that now, because President Trump.
Israel accepted over and over again a ceasefire where Hamas is refusing. It's using that pressure to try. Look, you need to understand, when you're fighting Hamas, a jihadist terrorist organization, their greatest achievement is to die as a martyr. They are proud of it. This is not a civilized organization. These are people who don't believe in the same moral. They don't have the same moral compass as me and you, who cherish life, who value life, who fight for life. They're fighting for death. And that makes a whole lot of difference.
Minister?
They are using their population as a tool of war. This is on their responsibility.
Minister, let me move on to the final question. President Trump is due to meet Prime Minister Netanyahu next week. You've talked about the process ongoing. I think the Egyptians are involved as well in this stage. President Trump has called for there to be ceasefire. How close are the two sides now to agreeing terms, and what comes next after, hopefully, a ceasefire is signed?
Well, that's the thing, Hamas's logic is very different. And so it's very difficult to deal with a terrorist organization whose greatest achievement is death. There's been a couple of proposals on the table we've been discussing, including a ceasefire it's now more than 2 weeks ago, that we've said yes as well. In the long term, I think it's very reasonable, the demands that we've put since the start of the war. The fact is that if those demands would have been met even almost 2 years ago, there wouldn't have been a war. And that's the first thing, is to bring back our family members who are being held in the dungeons of torture of Hamas for almost 2 years, being abused, starved. And the other one is that Hamas lay down their weapons. This is a death cult who's committed the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, who said they'll repeat the 7th of October over and over again. My children will never be safe if they continue to rule in power in Gaza and continue to build their military power for our destruction. This is their goal.
Okay.
So I think those two are very reasonable demands, especially after everything we've been through. I hope we're closer. I mean, Trump has put in the past enough pressure on Hamas, including pressure on Hezbollah, to force them to a ceasefire. And I really hope we'll be able to do it again.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've run out of time. But Sharon Haskell, Deputy Foreign Minister, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back with the day's headlines after this short break.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. Now, the government is launching what it calls the biggest ever knife amnesty today, with bins being placed in 3 major areas.
37 places to surrender weapons will be installed across London, Manchester and the West Midlands. Let's go live now. For more on this, we're joined by Shaman Powell, who is in Wolverhampton. Shaman, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, that's right. This is part of the government's largest ever knife amnesty scheme, and its attempt to try and halve knife crime within the next decade. I'm currently in Wolverhampton. I'm outside of St Joseph's Church, where one of the new 37 knife amnesty bins had been placed, and you can see behind me that this one is slightly different. It has a personal message in memory of Ronan Kanda. Ronan Kanda, of course, was a 16-year-old boy who was stabbed to death outside of his home back in 2022, just 16 years old, stabbed by youths who used a ninja sword. It was a case of mistaken identity, but ever since his killing, his mother Pooja has been tirelessly campaigning to get these ninja swords off the streets, and today's launch comes as a ban on ninja swords will be introduced from the 1st of August. So people, members of the public, will have the opportunity to hand in their weapons here. They will also have the opportunity to go to designated police stations across the country where, if they're comfortable giving their information, they may be offered some compensation for that weapon. However, understandably, many may be hesitant to do so, and therefore the government has also backed a scheme, a mobile van amnesty scheme, to try and get weapons off the street.
OK, Shaman, thank you so much for that update.
Yeah.
Right, let's take a look at today's weather then.
The perfect climate, wherever the destination. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, we came close to the highest temperature of the year so far yesterday, but it looks a bit cooler today. Mainly dry at first, but extensive clouds stretching from the Irish Sea into eastern Scotland could bring a little bit of patchy rain. The south is going to be muggy once again. Central Britain, eastern Scotland and the rest of Ireland will stay cloudy this morning, with a few more showery outbreaks possible, mainly in the north. Most other places, though, dry and sunny. It'll be cooler generally, still hot and humid in the southeast.
The perfect climate, whatever the forecast. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.